Good morning, or good afternoon, everybody. It's still morning in my head somehow. Anyway, welcome to the Wednesday, February 13th meeting of the CCWD Board of Directors. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Rebecca, would you please call the roll?
Director Underhill? Here. Director Retterman?
Here.
Director Davidson?
Here.
Director Cicada? Here. President Thomas?
I am here. Okay, at this point, we have public comment. It's on the agenda. At this time, members of the public may address the board on any non-agendized item. The public is encouraged to work through staff to place items on the agenda for board consideration. No action can be taken on matters not listed on the agenda, and comments are limited to 3 minutes. Do we have any public comments today? No? Okay, next item number 3 would be the consent agenda. The following items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. Items will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member may request that an item could be removed for later discussion. So we have items 3A, 3B, 3C, and 3D.
Move for acceptance. Second.
Okay, motion for acceptance and a second. All in favor? Well, would you do the roll, please?
Director Underhill?
Yes.
Director Retterman?
Yes.
Director Davidson?
Yeah.
Director Cicada?
Yes.
President Thomas?
Yes. Okay. Marching right along. Okay, item 4, new business. We have, the first item is 4A, recognition of Jeffrey Meyer as the interim general manager. And I think I have the pleasure of presenting this resolution. If I can read this into the record. Okay, we have resolution number 2019-09. Resolution of the Board of Directors of Calaveras County Water District in appreciation of Jeffrey Meyer. Whereas Jeffrey Meyer has served the district as interim general manager from October 2018 to February 2019, and in doing so ably demonstrated leadership and direction of the Calaveras County Water District. And whereas Jeffrey has exhibited his commitment and dedication to operate the district efficiently, effectively, and in his role as the role for the district, always placing the needs of the district before his own. And whereas Jeffrey ably handled both his role as Director of Administrative Services as well as interim general manager, and did very admirably at both. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Directors of Calaveras County Water District that the board give recognition and appreciation for Jeffrey's high level of personal integrity and superior performance while functioning as the interim general manager. Okay, this was passed and adopted, or we have to do a vote on it.
Move for acceptance.
Yeah. It says that we already approved it.
I just want to acknowledge that we'll get you the actual copy. This one has Larry Diamond's name on it, so.
Has what? Has what?
I said it has Larry Diamond's name on
Oh.
I'd be honored to be referred
to. Good job, Jeff. This is you stepped in and didn't miss a beat. Everything went as planned, and wanted to. This is nice that we're recognizing you, and you did do an awesome job. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you do deserve that recognition.
I appreciate it. It's been my pleasure.
And every time I did call Jeffrey, he was just responsive. I mean, Jeff, I like you as Jeff. As long as I've known you, you've just been so, dedicated to what you were doing here at CCWD, and we really appreciate it. I mean, you know, there's not another Jeffrey Meyer. Oh, yes, there is. And there is,
There just
yeah.
happens to be.
Sorry.
That's who you're talking about.
All right,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
enough of this levity. So we need a second to that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any public comment on this?
Do I
Okay.
count?
Yes.
I just want to say I appreciate working with Jeff. I learned so much from him on the agenda and why we do everything the way we do it. So I have appreciated my time with him immensely.
Nice.
That's,
And hopefully, we'll never need another interim general manager going forward, but if we do, I hope you're there.
Yes.
So in addition to the resolution, I have a little, I know Jeff watches his diet a lot, but he needs something for Valentine's Day.
Thank you.
Okay. This is yours.
You didn't bring anything for the whole class?
okay, we have the responsibility to confirm what's already written on this thing, so could you please do the roll?
Director Underhill?
Yes.
Director Radaman?
Yes.
Director Davidson?
Yes.
Director Cicada?
Yes.
President Collins?
Yes, and I take pleasure in presenting this to you, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
It's been my
Jeff.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, moving on to item 4B, we have a discussion and action regarding the refinancing of a portion of the district's outstanding CalPERS unfunded liability and authorizing the form of financial documents in connection therewith. I don't think we've seen that word in this chamber recently.
That's council.
Okay.
Let me pull up the PowerPoint and Cameron and I are going to tag team this one if you don't mind.
Just when we thought it was going to be a fun meeting.
Anyhow, this is fun for some of us.
But yeah.
It's a sacred-
This effort that you're seeing today is, or the presentation is a culmination of many months of hard work by a lot of really, really good people. I don't want to go into a lot of detail as to the PERS loan, how we came up with the dollar amounts of different iterations, because your board has talked about this for several meetings now. What I'd really like to do is acknowledge the people, the financing team that we put together to make this effort work. And when you look at this type of financing instrument, in reality, it's a pension obligation bond. And if you go back in history, the last 5, 6, 8 years, pension obligation bonds have been taboo. San Bernardino, Stockton, and others. Banks, financial institutions haven't wanted to touch them. We're on the very leading edge of this, and it took a great financing team to really put this package together and sell it to the banks. And I just wanted to recognize them. Eric Scriven of NHA Advisors, he's been here, he gave several presentations. He's worked with the district on and off for a number of years. Mike Meyer, the vice president there, did a lot of the analytics, a lot of the work, putting together the credit package. There's a lot of work behind the scenes. Todd Smith of Hilltop Securities, they're the placement agents. They're the one that reached out to the banks and helped put together this package. and get this great product that we're bringing to your board today, and his director, Andy Quall. And then, of course, Cameron Wiest of the Wiest Law Firm, Bond and Disclosure Counsel. We could not have done this deal if it wasn't for this team, and they deserve all the credit. And when you see what we got, you will understand how important it is when you put together a financing team. You don't go for the B leagues, you go for the reach for the top, and we got the A team here because they came through. Just to kind of review this, I'm sorry, it doesn't look like the PowerPoint came up here very well. Let me grab mine. When you look at a financing package of this magnitude, what we're trying to do is to reduce our costs, our interest costs to PERS, but also provide some type of stability, some type of predictability in our PERS costs. Going back, just to remind your board, PERS has two components: the normal cost, which is based on our salary, it's a percentage, and our unfunded accrued liability, which is basically everything in the past 10 years when PERS hasn't met expectations for investment and everything else. It's sort of their catch-up. It's actually identified as a dollar amount, and we have to pay that on an annual basis in addition to our normal costs, which are paid on a per payroll basis. If you look at, I wish I could get, let me see if I can get this to work. There we go. Come on. This red area here is our normal cost payments. It's a percentage of payroll. And this here is our UAL payments. This is all information provided by PERS. As you can see, our UAL costs go up higher, 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 and then they drop down in year 2037. Part of the reason PERS UAL costs are going up is because of our PERS's change in their discount rate. Their discount rate is what they anticipate to get in yields on their investments. The higher the discount rate, the less money they have to get from us. The lower the discount rate, the more money agencies have to contribute. They are lowering their discount rate from 7.25 down to 7. And so what that does, it jumps up our costs. And that's why you see this increase, or partially reason for this increase in our UAL payments. As you can see here, our annual UAL and normal costs are going to be rising to almost $2 million a year by the year 2031. That's a significant increase. And most of it, and this is for our miscellaneous plan only. We have 3 plans, and the miscellaneous plan is the most, I want to say, generous plan. That's our 2.7 of 55. Nobody can join that club anymore. It's closed because of PEPRA and the changes Governor Brown initiated several years back. Right now, when you look at this particular plan, we're at about 74% funded status. Not bad, but not great. What we're looking to do is to take a look at this overall cost and try to reduce it by getting rid of some of this interest cost, and that's what most of this is interest costs. They charge us 7% plus, and also get rid of and flatten this out to get some predictability. We talked about different options in previous meetings. One of the things that Director Ratterman talked about is how do we structure this loan? We looked at 15-year options, we looked at 17-year options, we looked at 20-year options, we looked at what's called ramp up or flat. We looked at ways to be able to save money on interest costs. Again, I'm not going to go into a great detail here because I bored you to death in the previous meetings. And yes.
Well, you did, Jeff.
Okay. But what we're trying to do here is identify what's the best package for the district. And that best package is to take a look at narrowing it down to just a portion of our nearly $9 million, $10 million on a UAL, unfunded accrued liability. And the last meeting in December, we looked at the 15, 17-year option. Director Adderman suggested that since if we go with a flat loan, level payments throughout, there will be that cost in the first 3 years or so that we're gonna have to come up with additional money. He suggested let's look for a ramp up that follows our projected PERS costs and then go flat so that we don't have a negative impact on our budget within the next couple years. We looked at ways to improve our funding level, and we wanted to do it again under 20 years. When we came back to your board in January, we looked at different options. And this is what we talked about here was the ramp up that we are looking at. You see how it mirrors our projected PERS costs? If we keep our loan payments in this ramp up mode, we don't increase our budget responsibility in the next 2 to 3 years, this time frame right here. And then it kind of goes up and then levels out and then obviously drops down over time. If you do a level payment, you can see here the 15 and 17, but we'd have to come up with additional money right here in these years. And funding, I gotta be honest, is really tight. So the thing we looked at is taking a look here at a ramp up option. So when we talked to the banks, we wanted 15-year level, 17-year ramp up, and 17-year level. Actually, I'm going to hand off here to Cameron in a little bit as we can talk about what the process is that we went out with the banks. He's more knows about the credit requirements that banks go through, the bond counsel, the loan documentations and everything. But I do want to hand out one thing before he talks to us. And let me grab it over here. Nope. Here we go. This is the term sheet we received from the lowest bid.
Thank you.
It was not available on Friday to be included in the budget packet, I mean, agenda package, because bids were not due until noon on Friday. And as you look at this, and Cameron will explain it a little bit more in detail. If you go down to the middle of the page, that's what a good financing team can do for you.
Yeah, that's great.
And remember, this is taxable rates. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Cameron. He's going to talk about where we are now, the steps we need to take, what your board needs to do at this particular meeting, and what we're going to do between now and February 28th. We're on a very, very aggressive timeline here, and I'll leave it to Cameron.
Excellent. Nice to be here. Thank you. So I do want to say that the taxable rate of 3 that you see here, 3.26 and 3.32, the conversion on that is roughly a 0.6 if you divide it by 0.6. So if to get to a tax exempt rate, if you wanted to kind of, because most deals are tax exempt, it's kind of rare when you have a taxable transaction for muni. So when you do the math on that, it's roughly under 2.2% for 17 years. So it's quite impressive. And I think there's a lot of components that go into that. Obviously, I think, as Jeff said, a good financing team that's recognized, that the banks recognize as being, a first-class team that knows what they're doing. But most importantly is the district. I mean, the district's been doing such a wonderful job with its financials. All its metrics are checking all the boxes for these institutions. So it was easy for them, I think, to come in and feel good about the credit very good about the credit. As a matter of fact, the winning bid, Umpqua, knows your credit better than anybody else because they've done a deal, they have an outstanding loan with them already. So just speaks volumes as to the kind of work that you've been doing, truly. But so what we've been able to accomplish here is part of the solicitation process. And really that was just the board having given us kind of the green light last meeting to go out and, or to go to work, roll up our sleeves, get the legal documentation in place, get the credit package in place that lays out and highlights all your credit metrics for these investors, and then put that entire package out for an opportunity to bid on it. We gave them, I think, a week and a half, roughly, a little over a week and a half. And so you see the winning bid, but there were several other bids, and the ranges, I think, were in the neighborhood of this low all the way up to a 4.7%. So you can see there was a large variation there. There were a couple of bidders at the aggressive mark too, so it tells us that there wasn't a lot of money left on the table. These institutions knew what they were doing and how to win it, and that shows up in the bid results. As a result of being able to go ahead and wrap this up by this meeting, you have the opportunity today to name, if you wanted to move forward with the best bid, you could name, by name in the resolution. I did speak with their legal counsel to make sure all the obstacles were, that they had a chance to look, their legal counsel had a chance to look through all the provisions in the loan documents and the other documents, and were they comfortable? And the indication today was yes, they've had a chance to do that. So really there shouldn't be any reason for you not to be able to name the winning bidder today, if you're gonna choose to go in that direction. So moving, I think, to the next slide. Is this is just a chart that demonstrates the various options that were bid upon, and now with I believe these reflect also the winning bid rates, and you can see the ramp up that Mr. Meyer was talking about versus the straight line, and what it does for your overall unfunded liability budget predictability for the future, and the ability to kind of manage your budgets for the next few years. You can see the purple line again is the ramp up, and is a way to ease in to what is already occurring. As Mr. Meyer said, you already have these payments. PERS is billing you for these, but you can see if you chose the purple line at some point in year 2022, 23, it's going to level off, and it's going to level out all the way out and take those spikes of the unfunded liability that would otherwise go up all the way off, flatten this out for you, and then drop it back down to match your normal cost payments. So you'll have real budget predictability in 2036, 37, and everything will be lowered and on one level payment plan at that point. Hopefully, PERS does their job and makes it happen. You never know, but so I think that has been gone over. Let's flip to the next page, and that is slide 9. And this really is a summation of the different options, but with real numbers put to them. And I think the one that we tend to be looking at, or at least it's highlighted with the red checks around the purple box there for the third option, is very attractive for a few reasons that staff is recommending. It really, in the bid results, you can see on the Umpqua interest rate, there's no difference in the bids between the 17-year flat and the 17-year ramp up, even though the average life down below, which is a critical component, about four lines down, you can see it's an 8.5-year average life for the 17-year flat versus an 8.9 on the purple 17 ramp option. Banks bid largely on that basis because that's a time cost of their money. So to see a flattened yield curve like this and the bid not changing was something that is value. It's a value in the margins, is what we call it. So there's real reason to kind of like this option other than just the ramped up basis to it. You can also see in, in real numbers what this means in savings to the district is about 5 or 6 rows down here where it says total savings versus prior payments. You're at a differential of about over $2.5 million, $2.654 million. When you do the present value calculations, that's the yellow boxes down at the bottom there. That's time value money. You can see that savings is 1.77 million in savings. So either way, there's very healthy savings. You can see in the PV box that 32.1% on the purple, again, option 3. Just to give you a frame of reference, in the GFOA, in the guidelines says that anytime you have a 3% net present value savings, it's worth your time to consider. So this is 32%. I think that says it enough. But in any event, those are really the numbers, and I could pause there, or we could just move to kind of the next steps. If you want to, if you wanted to stop for a minute on the numbers, we could do that.
Well, I did want to say something, Cameron. You did say that the district is in, good financial position, and banks know it. And I think it does have a lot to do with Jeff and his team. And kudos to him and putting this together. And I don't know how many times I've sat here and, refinancing loans and redoing loans and how much money we're saving. This seems like a ridiculous amount of money to be saving over a period of time for the district. And again, kudos to you, Jeff, and Cameron and the whole team that's not here today. But yeah, I think if there is anything further to go to go through, then yeah, let's hear it and get this thing processed.
Great. Well, thank you.
I just had one question. Go back to this final analysis and down to the bottom where it says annual payment next 15 to 17 years. You go from 680,000 to 870,000. Is that correct? And so what I'm reading into that is that for the first 2 years, we'll be at 680 and then ramp up to about 870.
That is correct. What you're seeing there is a result of choosing the ramp-up
Right.
process.
Okay.
So it will mirror the PERS, and it's similar to, you can see that visually in the graph on the prior page.
Is this paid monthly or once annually, the payment?
Semi-annual.
Okay, so twice a year.
Cameron, I just have one question that might reveal my lack of understanding about this, but in the first pages it said that our obligation for the unfunded portion of the PERS liability is about 10 million. And can you explain why we're only borrowing 5.6?
I think Mr. Meyer could do a better job. I do know that if you overfund your liability, because PERS is somewhat still of a moving target.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you were to go with this choice of taking those peaks off, you would now have a flat line and very predictable, but it will move slightly over the years, but it'll be flat. So to answer your question directly, I think that if you tried to go and take out the entire 10 million, you do risk that in certain years you're going to be overfunded and then maybe slightly underfunded. So it's kind of a measure to say, let's deal with most of this issue and not take it all off at this point.
Okay, yeah, I remember that discussion from before. Okay, thank you. Okay, next steps?
So the next steps are, as Mr. Meyer pointed out earlier, that we're on an aggressive time schedule here, and there is a real reason for that. I think it's worth mentioning is that there's been a change in the law to continuing disclosure requirements, which is it's SEC rules and regulations, and it requires disclosures be made on an annual basis. And it's not completely onerous, but it does cost money for municipalities to undergo the continuing disclosure process. And these new laws affect private placements like this is. If you had a public, you don't have any publicly offered debt, so you're not, you know, at this time, you're not subject to those continuing disclosure laws and the annual requirements. And that's a good thing in my mind because, you know, it's, the disclosure that goes into it is really made public, and it's for really, when you issue public debt and you have people that have invested in you from across the world on a public basis, they want a repository, a place to go look at how you're doing on a daily basis. And that's called continuous disclosure, and it gets posted with a website and everybody has access to it, but you don't have any public debt. However, there's been a change in the law that says even private placements after February 27th need to be subject to the same laws that public bond offerings have always been subject to. So we are really working hard to get this done on the 26th to close it so that you don't have those costs associated with continuing disclosure, because it really is tasking staff with more things to do, and it does have a small cost to it relative. I mean, it is a cost. So I think that's important to point out is we're trying to get this done before those new laws go into effect to save you some more money. And that's only if the board, you know, decides to move forward today. But that is the reason why we're being a little aggressive on the schedule.
So what you're saying is it's gonna cost us money to follow the law?
Yeah. I mean, what do we call those in California? Unfunded mandates, right? I mean, really, that's what we're talking about. But this is a federal law, and so they can get away with certain things.
Oh.
Yeah. So, the next steps, should you choose to move forward today, would be to go ahead and you know, announce maybe the winner, or give your you know, finance director or director of administrative services the autonomy to name the bank if you don't want to do it today. If you do feel comfortable, it is Umpqua Bank. If you don't, you would be tasking Mr. Meyer with that. So that's the next, that would happen today or very close to today. The next step is for the bank to actually go through their formal, to give us absolute credit authority, and that hasn't happened yet because they need your blessing before they go to their formal committee and get it blessed. This is under their $7 million threshold, so they're doing it locally. It doesn't have to go up through a bunch of ladders, and we've been told they're 99.9% confident that they're going to get approval. And then we would move directly into closing process, which is just due diligence on the certification of all signatures and parties and where those funds go and how they get to CalPERS at closing. So there's an escrow process. One of the documents in the resolution today is called irrevocable refunding instructions. That is the document that that sequesters the money and gets it to CalPERS on the and gives the bank instructions to wire transfer directly to CalPERS. And then so the other document, of course, is the loan agreement, which we've gone over in the past. But I guess it's safe to mention just that the parameters in this loan agreement mirror your existing debt documents. We did that intentionally so that you have nice consistency between the covenants of your existing loans and this proposed loan. So, but if there's any questions, yeah.
The costs for this loan, are they going to be paid with the loan proceeds?
Yes, it
Okay.
can be paid with loan proceeds and amortized over the life of the loan.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to move forward with the motion. And I do want to include in my motion the Umpqua Bank and naming the winner of the bank at this point. So motion for adopting this resolution approving the form and authorizing the execution and delivery of certain financing documents in connection with the refinancing of a portion of the district's outstanding unfunded accrued liability to the California Public Employees Retirement System, and providing further matters properly relating thereto, and naming Umpqua Bank as the winner of the loaning institution.
And I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any public comment on this item?
I will.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Is this agendized properly to name the bank?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Right.
Okay, any other board comments? Any public comments? If not, Rebecca, would you please poll the board?
Director Underhill?
Yes.
Director Letterman?
Yes.
Director Davidson?
Yep.
Director Siquet?
Yes.
President Thomas?
Yes. Thank you very much, Cameron. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Good job.
Good job.
That was
Okay.
a process, but it was a very, very interesting process.
No, just quickly, I mean, I assume that, you know, other county agencies are going through the same process. I don't know what the county's state of their unfunded liability is, but is this a path that we should pass on?
Actually, we'll tag team this again, because as I mentioned earlier, we are leading edge.
Yeah.
And yes, I would like to be able to pass this on to others, because this is something that can benefit all public agencies. Some of them are not aware of their PERS costs. It's very tedious reading through their PERS valuations and going continuously to PERS workshops, seminars, and understanding it. So yes, I think it's worthwhile to reaching out to the county and others. And
We might
Cameron
put it on
can-
the list of things that we want to talk to the CAO or board chair at, and just to find out if they're having the same issue, which I assume they are.
Yeah.
And whether or not.
Well, you know what, and I think what you're going at is sharing what we've done with other institutions, other districts, and maybe it's something that we, as part of an outreach, and a little bit of bragging, that we can, put together an article, and not necessarily for the Calaveras Enterprise, as much as for the Special District and Aqua, and other, mostly the special districts. And it wouldn't be, but there are a lot of other institutions that are involved in CalPERS besides, counties and cities, and so I don't know where else, but they just put it out there on our website as well, as to this being news and what we've done with our CalPERS unfunded liability.
CalPERS does reach out to some of the members and talks about their Fresh Start program, but all that does, it locks you into a shorter time frame. Same interest rate, shorter time frame. This is really taking a next step further. And please bear with me, because if I can ask Cameron to do this, to tell you how difficult it is to actually get public obligation bonds, to get people to start thinking, or pension obligation bonds to start thinking about that. It's a change of mindset.
Right, it really is. And we've done this in the past. We've been able to help other agencies in cities do this. What's cutting edge about this one, compared to other deals that we've worked on, is that it's not a pension obligation bond. It's not under the statutes of it. There is a set of statutes, pension obligation bonds. And it really just takes your M&O where this is embedded. Your PERS debt repayment is embedded in your maintenance and operation. And so when you think about that, what we're doing here is taking that cost that you already have in your M&O, and we're moving it down to, I explained in the last meeting, to the net revenue pledge for because your existing debt has net revenues that are pledged to debt service. It has your gross revenue of the operation, and it has your maintenance and operation, which has your PERS, and then that bottom line number called net revenues is pledged to debt service. And that's how bonds have been issued forever for water and wastewater enterprises. But pension obligation bonds, they have always done it forever, just taking your M&O cost and sliding that over to repay debt. You're either paying it to CalPERS or you're paying it to pension obligation bonds. This takes a different look at it and says, what can we do if we move this to a different category? What kind of benefit can we get in the marketplace? And we found out that banks really love that. They like it because they now can compare themselves to other debt that you have outstanding and say, we're on equal footing. We no longer are subject to these lawsuits, these wild San Bernardino and Stockton, kinds of scenarios that has all this tainted, association. Now we have something that's standardized, that has moved into a true debt position with other creditors, and we feel very comfortable about that. So that's what's innovative and different. Pension obligation bonds have been done for a long, long time, some successful, others not. Like, for example, San Bernardino, that's the the poster child for what can go wrong, you know, and so, and we've actually been able to do pension obligation style financings for other cities, but what we've done to mitigate the San Bernardino effect is to have to do a lease back of some essential assets. So to get those deals done, they had to actually post collateral and lease, you know, like a police station or something, so that the creditors have some security because they're so afraid of pension obligation bonds. So this is innovative. We didn't have to go through the lease process. You know, we put your debt on equal footing, and we had outstanding results. So.
And I'm pleased because we've worked with you for many, many years. And, you know, even through that relationship, that you bring trust, or we, you know, trust
It
is
works both ways.
established.
It does, yeah. It's been a long relationship, and
Yes.
I'm very pleased, and it seems that you are as well, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin.
Okay, the next item, we have a report on the January 2019 Operations Department by Damon Wyckoff.
Good afternoon, President Thomas, directors. So in your packet, you do have the Operations Department report, which basically lists high points from each discipline and for the month of January. And there's always a couple, typos are like mosquitoes. I try to hunt them down, but I always find a couple, so my apologies on that.
Right after it's printed, right?
Pretty much,
And
yeah.
everybody's looked at it already too.
Yeah.
Everybody sees them.
Exactly. A couple things I just want to point out to you in the written document, one of which is on page 2, and it's also echoed on page 6 and 5, which is the annual switchover from the tunnel tap off McKay's Reservoir to the old Hunter's Reservoir. This is up at the Ebbets Pass Water Treatment Facility, and there's maintenance that's conducted on the apparatuses that I believe it's NCPA is responsible for, and so that necessitates the district to switch over to our alternative water supply. Usually this is done in October, from what I understand, so this happening in January was somewhat of a change, and it did create some turbidity events, and some folks didn't notice it, and so as a follow-up, what we're doing is we're analyzing the water quality data associated with both supplies to see if there's something within the water, perhaps pH, that could create some changes that folks will notice. So there's more to come on that. So I just wanted to point that one out to y'all. Also on page 3 and 4.
Damon, what is this switch over for? What kind of maintenance? Is maintenance done by us, or it's
It's done by the other utility, NCPA.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so basically they have to de-water the tap where we draw the water supply from for Hunters. So that supply isn't available to us through the McKay's tunnel tap. And so we have the Hunters Reservoir where we have an old pump station, which is actually in the CIP to repair, reestablish. And so we use those old pumps, and that work effort results in electrical, mechanical, and water treatment plant operations staff all working together to confirm the operations of the raw water pump station. And then we operated that facility for a period of approximately 4 days. And then in transitioning back to the tunnel tap, whatever the work effort that occurred associated with NCPA's work created some high turbidity events also for us. So then we were kind of having to baby the plant, if you will, to achieve high quality water, which we do, but it just takes a little additional work effort. You see that illustrated in the operations reports for Hunters also.
and that tank up there, that's not enough water to hold
Correct.
off for 4 days?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's right. Yep. And then, so just to touch upon really briefly, distribution systems, page 3 at the bottom, Copper Cove. We do have some service line work that occurred. These are just high points as well. Jenny Lind on page 4, approximately 30 work efforts associated with service lines and water mains. And this is actually not all of those. So I just want to point that out to y'all before we talk, or I show you some high points on this PowerPoint here. Does anybody have any questions regarding the written document? We can jump into this if y'all if you
I,
like.
I was just looking at the fact that you placed a new 2,500 gallon chlorine tank
Right. Yeah, so
into,
the,
at Hunter's.
yep,
Uh-huh.
exactly. And upgraded the chlorination pump as well, so it's all flow paced. That pump will kick on based on the water flow, the influent flow to the facility, and it knows how much chlorine to dose, and it actually improves the overall operation. And the new tank is actually double contained, so it's a safer way to store chlorine on site. Because it actually, if there was a breach on the internal sodium hypochlorite tank, the external tank would hold all the volume that you could put into that tank. So that's a good project for the facility. So jump into the PowerPoint really quick. I just wanted to point out a couple of Rancho Calaveras service lines. The one on the left is Hotley. That was a service, just to kind of give you guys a picture of, I'm sure you've seen this before, of what the folks out in the field experience on a day-to-day basis. And the picture on the right, I just wanted to, it's important to depict that oftentimes staff have a good general idea of where the leak may be, but the work effort is gonna be, it's gonna result in multiple potholes to ensure that we actually find where the failure occurred. And so you see actually in the embankment, a hole there, and also in the street. And sometimes, you know, we have to, pothole across the street. And so sometimes it can be quite challenging to find where the service lines are leaking. And so, Director Davidson, we discussed at the last meeting when we talked about operations, the Highway 26, the morning of New Year's. And I just wanted to put some pictures up here to give you an understanding of what occurred. So in the picture on the left, approximately where that last cone is, where you can barely see it, is where the water was actually percolating and sheeting across the highway.
Yeah, I was down in that shade.
Yeah, and actually where the vac-on suction hose in the ground is where the actual failure occurred. And so what we have is we have a 2-inch Schedule 80 water main that had a valve right here, and it had failed here, and it's probably been leaking for quite some time, because you can see how it just, eroded away the brass and PVC. And so what we feel happened is quite some time ago, you can see how, it's not really easily depicted in the picture, but in this area, it's quite easy to just drive over the shoulder, to kind of create a shortcut on the turn there. And what we feel happened is folks were driving over that G5 lid. There you see where the valve key is actually in it's called the G5, where at 12 feet down is our valve. So as folks turn off the road, they drive over that lid, and there's a pipe that sits on top of the valve, which allows you to unmitigated access. If we need to get in there with a valve key, this pipe keeps that area open, and we can get in there, we can open and close that valve. Well, as that pipe sits on the valve, if somebody drives over it, over time it's gonna snap the pipe, which is what happened, cracked it, basically. And so this picture gives you an idea of just how deep, and I'm sorry for the skew of the image, of just how deep the G5 actually is. So going back to this picture, this concrete collar with the T valve in it is at road level. And then the next picture is right under that concrete collar is the top of that blue pipe. And then as we dig deeper, we see the failure at the bottom of the hole, and next to it is that pipe. So it gives you an idea of just how deep that valve is actually in the ground. It's at 12 feet. So we actually, this work effort wasn't so easy because of that fact. We actually had to bench the excavation away from the hole to make it safe for our guys to get down in there and get the repair made. This was another interesting one that occurred in January. So we have this lift station 14 in Copperopolis, which is in the Connor Estates area. And as you all know, we had quite a substantial amount of rain in January, and as that runoff occurred, it actually inundated this lift station with about 18 inches of water. And we had water over almost to the electrical panel, which you can see the door open And so upon as staff arrived, we realized that the drain inlets that are around the actual lift station were covered up. So you can also see here that there have been gutter drains formed into the embankment behind the lift station. That's that little black piece of pipe sticking out of the embankment there. So all of this water was actually diverted to flow behind the lift station, and then unfortunately the drain inlets that would then carry that water away were plugged. So staff was able to go out there at night because we had an alarm, we had a failure, and reestablish the opening to this drain inlet. As you can see, they put rocks around it. You can see actually the base rock as it kind of pooled under the heavy runoff around the edges, and that's what is depicted here in this first, this picture right here. You can see all that drain rock, base rock, excuse me, has just kind of been pushed over that meter box lid. And so we were able to work with the HOA, and they really jumped in and got after exposing. There's 2 drain inlets, one on either side of the lift station, and they have also talked to the homeowners about routing their gutter runoff to the backside. So we made some positive progress on this. It's just one of those items that can occur when maintenance doesn't happen. This is another one that happened in Copperopolis in the month of January. This was a cul-de-sac snowbird court that had approximately 5 service lines, all of which were failing. So we had leaks just non-stop, and so we implemented a project just to replace all of the service lines. And this is kind of an after shot of the patch, the cold patch installation prior to final pave. So we still have to get a compaction test completed on this, and then once we get the thumbs up on that, we can go in and complete final paving on this. As you can see, the patch pave up the hill, there was actually a service line that terminated up near the propane tank. So that was quite an interesting work effort, but I think the staff did a really good job. It's clean. You know, folks get tired when they're continually faced with service line leaks in front of their home, and so you know, it was a long time coming, and our guys are really happy to get it done, and I think they did a great job.
Damon, I have a question about this.
Yeah.
In looking through the checks that we approved previously, I think that there was like a $1,500 charge for an encroachment permit for this work. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so if you have a project that is over 60, I believe, 60 square feet within the county right of way, they are gonna require an individual encroachment permit at this point in time, which is a $1,500 charge. Some of that which would be a deposit. And so there are actually a few items associated with the paving, potential paving requirements that the county is looking to place on the district as a possibility that I will actually be bringing before the engineering committee. But in a nutshell, the county has been focused on, especially in January, ensuring that the district achieve compaction tests, which is approximately $50 per test for every repair. So as we're about to discuss in the next agenda item, you know, the Rancho Calaveras area could have 60 patch paves that we need to complete. And so if potentially we have to complete a compaction test for each one of those, that's gonna add up quickly. And then,
So they're actually asking for $1,500, or is it a $1,500 bond? I mean, do we put up a bond, or?
It's a check, but there's a portion of that as a deposit. So that we will receive that once the inspection is complete, approximately 500 of that. And then depending on how often the inspector comes out and how much work effort is associated with it, he could eat up the $1,000 that we put towards his work effort in a quick minute. Couple that with the requirement for a SWIP, so a stormwater pollution prevention program for each project, and then a traffic control plan.
Is that what's required?
Yeah.
Even on these small?
So not necessarily an actual document, which is over an acre, but best management practices should be put in place. So cocoa matting, wattle, straw, It could be simple, it could at times get complicated, but
But
yeah.
ultimately, what it'll do is it'll leave these things open for a longer period of time as well.
Well, so that's part of the counterpoint is, okay, well, we need to invest in trench plates, and we need to, ensure that we can get back into the hole at any point in time as need be, and that would be dropping a trench plate down, which is not light, so therefore you need another piece of equipment, say a backhoe, to complete a patch repair. And then you need a skidded trench plate, which, you know, we have trench plates, most of them are not skidded, and so that would require an investment there. And then if you were to slurry, which is a potential requirement of the counties, then you're gonna need to wrap all fittings and appurtenances, and then the specification for our backfill could potentially change, you know, to incorporate sand, so that when we get through that slurry layer, which could be 18 inches thick, jackhammer through that, we actually have something we can dig through.
When did these guidelines change?
They have not changed, so that's what's interesting, is there's a
See,
discussion.
That's what frustrates me, because
Right.
they're actually enacting change that hasn't been authorized by the board. I get the same nonsense at the building department.
Right,
You know, there hasn't been any damn action, but they're enforcing it.
yeah,
You
and
know?
so kind of as an olive branch from my perspective was, there were other items also.
I'd get a different branch.
Like a switch?
So my approach as of right now has been, we'll get some compaction tests done, and we'll go ahead and get an encroachment permit for the job specific. But we're not gonna notify you every time we get in the street due to an emergency. And if you're not at work, we're not gonna call the sheriff's department, because we have a right to be there, and we're gonna backfill as we see fit. And so, I think there's been a little give and take, and I think we're on a fruitful path forward for the district from
Is
my
there a-
perspective.
Just, you know, I don't want to prolong this, but I would like you to bring this to the engineering committee, because this really does frustrate me, but we're talking about privately maintained roads. Now, I could maybe concede a county-maintained road, but.
Well, that's really what I'm talking about, yeah. And absolutely, it's on the agenda for the engineering committee,
Okay.
and I have some,
I think that this particular court is a county-maintained court, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not Rocky Road,
yeah.
so.
Yeah, so, but we were able through this effort to kind of, I think, set the county at ease somewhat on our work effort. And I'm moving forward, I would hope that they're gonna be a little bit more reasonable when it comes to patch paving requirements and final paving requirements. And then finally, just some pictures of the recent snow here's West Point. Haven't seen that much snow up there in quite a long time. The picture on the right depicts the tree that had fallen across the access road to the water treatment plant. So just kind of to follow up on these pictures, we had standby staff working over the weekend, plowing all locations from Vallecito on up the mountain to ensure access for all our staff. And then we had approximately 3 folks, 2 from the mechanical department and the on-call operator, who happens to be a collections worker, fueling generators. Power went out for some time, however, it didn't negatively impact any of the facilities, and we were able to get everything back in action in fairly short order, knock on wood. It was about 1.5 foot of snow in the Arnold area, yeah, so. And right now, it's raining. I just came from Arnold before the board meeting, and we anticipate that's gonna turn to snow here in the evening, and let the adventures begin.
Yeah.
This
Okay, is
picture's
this meeting
interesting.
over yet?
Yeah, right, I know. This is a really good shot of our staff member, field staff got of copper during a heavy rain event. It just illustrates that oftentimes, you know, stormwater runoff can look like a service line or a water leak. And we actually do get quite a few calls from items like this. You know, hey, you've got a leak, I've got a leak in my front yard, and then it's runoff, so. And then here's Vallecito, tree down on Saturday, I believe it was. And then Sheep Ranch over towards the water treatment facility. And then here's some pics of Arnold.
Yeah.
The pic on the right is a great one from a drone. And that is the end of that.
Very nice.
Okay, thank you, Damon. Any other questions of Mr. Wyckoff?
I just, certainly, my phone started ringing, and so I can just imagine what our, dispatch was over the weekend.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna be looking at it again, and so I, because I say a couple of customers called me, and so I called in and
Yep.
talked to Damon. I really appreciate the attention that he, paid
Thank
to
you.
our situation, and again, it honestly, it looks like the 80s up there. The snow is so deep.
Yeah, it's really refreshing too how active field staff are, how quickly they get involved, and how responsive the on-call operator is. Because he was getting quite a few calls, and he was out plowing snow and fueling generators and answering those calls and writing the calls and the information in his logbook, and he would call me and touch base if there was an issue or a question. And so we had a really good back and forth all weekend, and it's positive. It's really positive.
So I have Damon's number in my phone now.
Yeah.
No, thank you, Damon. This is, again, like I said, this last time you gave this report, this is very nice to see what's going on out there and what we're doing and how we're addressing it. Good job, thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
I enjoy reading the reports. Very informative.
And the photos, too.
Yeah, those are good.
Okay,
Yes.
next item, we have the item 4D. Or did you cover that, the weekend repair work in
I
that?
did not, I can cover that briefly if you like.
Okay.
Really, I can be quick.
Mr. President, I'd like to, for the edification of the two lady board members who were absent from our mid-year budget report, let them know that we did repurpose, your board did acknowledge and recommend repurposing some of the capital outlay budget and utilities to go towards not only purchasing equipment for efforts like the weekend leak repair, but also the additional overtime that's going to be necessary to fund this project. So there was no budget increase for this program. We just reallocated money in utilities from the capital outlay up into salary and benefits. And that capital outlay budget, they were looking for $300,000 in the 18-19 budget for a hydro excavator that they have said they don't need now, and they needed other equipment to help them out. That's where the funding is coming for this program.
Yeah, so really to provide you with a summary is, the Rancho Calaveras Jenny Lind distribution crew really spends most of their day focused on service line leak repair, and oftentimes it's a full circle clamp patch, because to really get in there and replace a service line takes a concerted effort that oftentimes is not generally truly known. It could be 4 hours, it could be 3 hours, it could be 8 hours, depending on what we have in the ground, what the underground service alert provides. Is there telephone? Is there another utility? So those things can complicate the overall service line replacement. So it's oftentimes, due to the fact that we have so many in-process leaks, it's much more efficient for staff to go through and repair the leak. Let me back up. The service lines in the Rancho Calaveras area do not have an isolation valve at the main. So were they to have an isolation valve, if we were to get a call of, hey, we have a service leak on Baldwin, if we could pothole down to the isolation valve on the service line and shut it. Due to the fact that we don't have isolation valves, we're forced to allow those lines to continue to leak, which creates a nuisance for our ratepayers. And they continually see these in-process service line leaks and wonder what the heck is going on here. And so in order to quell the kind of the backlash associated with the need for repair, our guys are really focused on stopping that water from coming out of the service line. Throw a patch on it, jump in there, get a patch on it, get out, and we'll go to the next one. And oftentimes when they roll back into the yard at the end of the day, they get calls from customer service saying, hey, there's 3 or 4 more. And they have a list of approximately 50 in process going at any one time. Some of those have to stay on that list for quite a while until we can grab a hold of additional staff from other service areas, bring them over to complete traffic control, or if it's a little bit more complicated of a repair and it's not necessarily a service line, perhaps it's a valve on a main that's going to involve some mechanical connecting points. Then we would bring in the construction crew. So those work efforts take coordination and they take time. So what this weekend work effort essentially does is it allows the supervisor of the distribution system and myself to open it up 6 positions for weekend work. And just to kind of give you an overview of the work plan, the work would be completed on Saturday. The positions are opened up on a voluntary basis. They're filled on a first come, first serve. If we only have 3 or less, we're not going to complete a weekend work effort, because the idea is we want to have a safe environment with plenty of traffic control, plenty of eyes on traffic and cars to see what's going on and do the work safely. We'll basically have a designated work effort at the week prior, and then once the work is complete, we'll get an update of what occurred on the Monday afterwards. And then we can, yeah, go ahead.
Do you anticipate, getting 3 or more, or workers, or as it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys
Yep.
you've met with staff.
Yep.
Are they interested in working on Saturdays and putting in this extra time?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, good,
Yep.
good.
And really what the thought behind it is this work effort coupled with the middle of the week work effort and tied into some CIP projects associated with wholesale replacement of service lines in the area is going to allow us to kind of get a bigger bite at the apple, so to speak, in getting ahead of the failure of the distribution
Or
system.
just getting caught up?
And that's right. And then when we can get caught up, then we get to ground zero, we can start to focus on other work associated with the distribution system, service or valve exercising, unidirectional flushing, optimization of the system, pressure analysis, and it really frees that crew up to get a little bit more work done.
Is there an opportunity to put in those valves that you're talking about sometimes while you're working on these leaks?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and with 6 folks, those kind of decisions can be made in the field and they can be implemented because we have enough people on staff to get that work done.
And last question, does this go on anywhere else besides Rancho Calaveras, Jenny Lynn?
Well, so in smaller volumes in Copper Cove and in smaller volumes up on the pass too.
Okay, thanks.
But it's not so extensive. But Copper Cove's distribution system makeup is very similar. No corporation stop, it's called, no valve at the main polypropylene tubing distribution line or service line to the meter. Very similar.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I had a question. The objective will be to select the easiest and safest repairs from a list of acknowledged ongoing service line leaks. So that, you were saying Baldwin, for
Yeah.
example. So you take 2 leaks or 3 leaks on Baldwin. Do you do the entire line while you're out there, or just?
So, well, for the most part, this will be just a repair clamp, full circle repair clamp. However, we will be able to, as we get back to square zero, my objective is to allow the crew in that area to move forward with full replacement of service lines. Yeah, and that's kind of the idea, is get ahead of all of the leaks.
Okay.
So then as leaks pop up, we can analyze, hey, if this is an 8-hour day, we have all day tomorrow to replace the service line. And then if it's only 4, that's a benefit to us, and then we can jump ahead and get some other additional work done. But we're kind of looking up at the tidal wave right now. We need to get above it to see the horizon is really what's going on.
Assume, and I think we've spoken about this before, but, if you are on, one street, I'm sure we're mapping, the areas that we have continued leaks, so we can make a decision about which lines that we need to change.
Yep.
That are continual problem areas.
Yep,
And that
absolutely.
sort of thing, or at least check pressure, or make some decisions based on that. But so we're gonna continue, I'm sure we're mapping them now, but we're gonna continue to map these leaks so we have that data to easily look at and make some decisions.
Absolutely, yep.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it very much, Damon.
Good job, Damon.
Okay, item 4C, review of the district's assessment of telecommunications tower requests. I saw Mr. Gomes. There he is.
You need the IT guy?
Really on it today.
The rain brings out the nasty.
Welcome aboard.
What is it that calms it down?
Jumping off roofs.
Well, this item, we want to give you an update on the status of our telecommunication tower requests, as we've had some third parties in the area reach out, not just to staff, but also reach out to individual board members to see if they could get some traction on, to them, what they feel are fairly simple requests to be able to get some antenna equipment that they have to help spread out their internet service zones, and that's specifically what they've been asking for recently. I just want to give you a brief overview of what's really happened over the last 20 years. It's a relatively newer technology, the tank sites that are affected, and then some of the issues that we have, which are least concerns, the review process that we're going to go through, and then if you have any questions or comments. This is just an overview of the actual about 30 or so tank sites that the district has. They're in all four corners of the county. Tank sites in and of themselves are typically looked at as a very valuable piece of real estate, not just for water distribution, because you can gravity feed your distribution system, but also for communications technology. You're typically overlooking a region that has all the homes built, and so if you have an antenna up there, your reach out with your antenna signals also works pretty well. We actually have on this map, and I apologize, it's not quite as clean as I was hoping you could see it, but there are 3 red dots on there, one in Forest Meadows, one up in the Big Trees area, and one up in the West Point area. Those 3 red stars are Verizon antenna towers, and I wanted to show you what they look like. We have entered into contracts with actually Golden State Cellular a number of years ago, when Golden State Cellular was also our cell service provider. They sold their business to Verizon. Verizon came in, looked at what Golden State Cellular had initially put up, and requested from the district the ability to put in higher quality, taller antennas. And so the 2 pictures on the left are the pictures of the antenna tower. You can barely tell what it is because they have the tree motif on the tower, but actually if you see the 2 trees behind the tank, the one on the left that's as tall but has much more standardized looking branches is actually the cell tower. The middle picture is that same cell tower, and that's what the base looks like, and that's their security. They put little fencing around their pad inside. That region, there's no outside exterior fencing to that Verizon tower. It's just that little section of fencing right around the base. Houses their equipment and houses the ability to get to the climbing that tower. The tower on the right is the new one that Verizon just installed in West Point. They originally had just a similar tripod style tower you've seen behind the district office here. That went online last year. It's over 100 feet tall. And the reason we wanted to spotlight the Verizon towers is that these leases are not a simple request. There's a long-term commitment when you enter an antenna-style lease. This is not like somebody who has a tree trimming project and they want to park their trucks alongside the district property and say, hey, can we do this for a month or so? That's a pretty simple request to allow, and then know it's got an end life to it. When you talk about a company that's looking to put an antenna system up on to reach out to customers, you're talking about a 7-day-a-week operation, 24-hour-a-day service, 365 days a year for many, many years to come, literally decades, and if their business model works. So what we want to make sure you understood is that the concerns we have is that this is not a very simple request. I think I jumped ahead here. As far as the history, we've actually worked with other agencies outside of CCWD to have the ability to have shared antenna resources. So this isn't something new for us. Back in the early 2000s, we coordinated with the Technology Services Department of Calaveras County. At that time, for CCWD staff to have access to the county network in order to have access to their assessor data, so we wouldn't have to send people over, the building department data, so we could see permits when they came online, or someone would come to our county and say, yeah, I've got a building permit, I need a meter, and we could verify immediately on the computer, yeah, they do, or maybe this guy's jumping the gun, trying to get his meter alongside with getting his permit that he's hoping to get here pretty quick. We also had the ability to get to the scanned recorded documents for a time, and we're working to get that again. Lastly, we had access and have access to their GIS files. So we've had a nice coordinated effort with the Technology Service Department of the county. After that, we had, to get that communication link with the county picked up the building at the corner where if you're familiar with where the old surveyor's and farm advisor's office was, right there at the corner of Mountain Ranch Road and Highway 49. We actually, at our old building at 423, beamed to that building, and then from that building, we had an antenna that went from there over to the dispatch building, the old sheriff's jail. Because the county had staff inside that farm advisor's office and surveyor's office, the county asked us, hey, if you're gonna put your infrastructure on here, would you mind us sharing that bandwidth to get to the county? So we entered into a very collaborative partnership at that time, and it worked very well. They helped us still maintain that connection to the county, but now we were also helping county departments also maintain that, and it didn't affect our performance at all. The bandwidth was adequate for everybody. More recently, when we moved down here, we didn't have Comcast at the corner. Actually, we still don't. So we have a antenna here at the back of the building that beams over to the new sheriff's tower on the county site. That tower still gives us the access to the county programs that we've had for now almost 20 years. But in addition, the high-speed internet that we get here at this district office, the modem from Comcast is housed over at the sheriff's office. And we actually beam that signal back over here, and that's how we get high-speed internet at this office. There's no Comcast here. Our modem is actually over there. Again, we've just had a very successful collaborative effort with the county in making all of this work. In the last year or so, the Sheriff's Department approached us and said, hey, we're having a lot of communications issues up in Highway 4. We can't get a hold of our towers, especially when they start going off Highway 4 itself. It's a nightmare. There's a lot of dead pockets. Would you be willing to let us do a pilot and have the ability to see if we could put in an antenna on your Sawmill tank site and go ahead and see if we can get some better connectivity up there? It was dramatically improved for them. And we have always had, both with Jeff and Dave as well before, a very open approach to saying we will work with the county. You know, just as Damien was saying, you know, we're trying to have that olive branch. We've worked extremely well with the county because that's the kind of branch you gotta use, Jeff. It works well.
So you say.
So my point being is that, you know, we've worked with them. It was a successful pilot, so we actually entertained with the Sheriff's Department. They put up a new antenna at Sawmill, and it's a shared resource. We can also hang antennas on it for our own use, but it's something they actually funded and put up. So, you know, it's not just time and staff time. It's actually money and dollars for equipment that's also being shared resources for all of us, which ultimately benefits Calaveras County residents, which is the bottom line here. So having said that, Golden State Cellular, as I said, went to Verizon. Verizon came in and put in 3 new antennas up at Big Trees Village. It's Big Trees 4-5 tank, Forest Meadows, and up in West Point. We came up with the least concerns. That's a long-term commitment. Each of those tank sites, those 30 tank sites that we highlighted with the black dots, is unique. Each one requires its own set of analysis because it's like a piece of property. No one property is the same in this county. Other things, when we enter into a lease, and these concerns we addressed when we did this with Verizon, and prior to that with Golden State Cellular, are what are the district's operational needs? You know, is anything we allow somebody else to do and come in on our property, especially something as permanent as this, is it going to affect us at all? And then if it's inside district property, are we going to have district staff made available to escort them? Because we're not going to just give somebody else a key who doesn't work for us and open ourselves up to that liability for somebody coming onto our site on the company. But if they're providing a service that's 7 days a week, 365 days a year, now you're talking about a lot of potential extra staff time that the district shouldn't be covering or having to pay for. But it's also more than just an imposition. You're asking for your staff's overtime resource, basically, to now also be committed to helping a third party. So we have to look at our labor pool and say, do we have staff time for that? Lastly, when you look at a lease, it involves somewhat of a contract review as to what you're going to do, and we rely upon our engineering department to do that. Well, just recently, Saddle Creek and Castle and Cook sold to Copper Valley, and we have dozens of documents engineering currently saddled with trying to make sure, no pun intended, that they have to review to make sure that the new Copper Valley group is on board with all the agreements that Castle and Cook and Saddle Creek did already have with us. So having said that, the site review process pretty much goes through these kinds of steps. The availability of the site itself. is this a site that we own, or are we just on an easement? For example, 60K tank in Big Trees, we have an easement with the state park. We can't just sit there and go lease out extra space on our antenna because we don't even own the land that the tank is on. We certainly have the right to go ahead and put an antenna up for our own purposes, but that's not available to somebody else. Are there easements, even if we own the land, for access to that land? Because some of these sites are landlocked. And so you have to look at whether or not we have a back road into it over somebody's piece of property. Well, again, is it proper to go ahead and open that up to a third party when we don't even own the land to get to the tank site itself? And again, each site needs to be looked at for these purposes. Are there neighbor concerns where even if we have activity going to that site, does it cause an issue for customer service who have to field phone calls from neighbors complaining about the fact that people are going out to our tank sites? Bummerville tank up in Wilseyville and the tank, the Valley Springs mall over up on Ross Drive, both have those concerns. We have very active neighbors who don't like seeing people drive by their homes. It's a very small road, very little activity, so they're very conscientious when they see more activity developing. Other issues then that we start looking at, if we have the availability, we have the accessibility, what are the district's maintenance requirements? Is the area around the tank where they would want to put an antenna going to impede our maintenance requirements for that tank? For example, if it's a steel tank and we need to paint it, and you've got to run a lift all the way around 360 degrees, you can't block off one little corner and all of a sudden keep people from going back and forth back there. You have to make sure that the antenna site itself is actually off far enough that it's not going to impede our maintenance requirements and or our operational needs of that tank. We also have to check with engineering staff because we don't know what the long-term plans necessarily are. I wouldn't know off the top of my head. If they're going to replace that tank in place, or if they're actually going to have to build a second tank next to it and then take out the old tank. But if you need that extra footprint for the other tank, you don't want to, again, put an antenna there that's permanent and block them from putting in another tank. Site security and liability. If, as we've shown in Forest Meadows and up at West Point, they put in their own fencing around their towers because we didn't have the site itself fenced off. But if we have certain areas where we have total fencing around the site, we can either ask them to go ahead and put in a new fence that would kind of carve out their spot if that's what they want. Or, again, it comes back to the staff escort issue. Do they have to get a hold of CCWD staff to be escorted? And then that component as well gets added to the contract because that's not a ratepayer expense. That's going to be their expense on a time and materials basis. Power requirements. Several of our tank sites don't have power. All they have is a phone line, lease line, that goes to it that has a flow valve on it. So if they need power up at that site, they may need to bring in their own power. If we do have power at that site, we typically will have a generator to keep whatever we need powered running. But would this third-party company also want to tap into that power? Would we let them? If we would, and their power requirements are pretty minimal, so I don't think they would have a dramatic effect on the power draw of a generator. But what if we have a strategy of saying, okay, this generator can run and run out for 6 hours. We're not going to worry the tank water's good. These are tank sites. They don't run dry immediately if the generator's not running. So we may not have as a district priority reservicing that generator if it does go out until maybe the next business day. But if you're running a service again 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, they may want that generator to be right back up and running, or they're not going to have their service being provided. So those are concerns that we have. Would they want to try and change our priority schedule for us running our generators? Again, these are just concerns that we have to raise, but these are analyses that we have to run as staff. It's not just, oh, yeah, go ahead and let them hang an antenna up on our tank. Lastly, one of the other concerns we have is, are there other governmental organizations that may also have a priority for potential use? We just entertained a very successful project with the Sheriff's Department up at its pass. They have other dead spots in our county, Sheep Ranch, West Point, down in Copper, down in Jenny Lynn. There are dead spots throughout this county for our public safety. As a district, our priority, I think, will always be to first assist and be there for other governmental organizations before we worry about somebody else. Lastly, when we did the Verizon contracts, we recognized with these new towers they put in, and it's a board resolution 2016-51, that explicitly states a third party can come up to the Verizon site and go through to Verizon directly and hang antennas on Verizon tower. Verizon has to notify us they've had this request. It's an extra $500 a month to CCWD per independent entity that hangs their equipment on the Verizon tower. That way we still have knowledge and control of what's going on. But we've made that opportunity available. So even today, we have made it available to the third parties to have the ability to go to some of our tank sites, the Forest Meadows, the Big Trees 4 to 5, and the West Point water treatment plant towers, and have the ability to hang their equipment up there too, if that's what they want to do. What we found, in summary, is that the district recognizes and values the interests of for-profit third parties. I mean, we've already established these opportunities. We've done it for cell providers with new Verizon antennas. And we've made it through our contract language already through board resolution. We gave that ability to Verizon to market that out even further. So we've already made that opportunity out there.
What's the term of our agreement with Verizon?
The term itself?
I don't know.
What do you mean term?
How long?
How long?
10 years?
I think it's 10 years with renewal, at least one renewal.
Yeah.
I'd have to look.
So it's been renewed, what? It's been renewed once, or is this a new agreement?
Verizon picked up the new contracts, I think, in 2016.
Yeah.
They pay $1,700 a month per site per month. That's $60,000 a year we earn from Verizon. It was definitely, the ROI penciled out on that one. 60 grand a year, that's money that comes to the district, and we don't have
And
to
we
do
don't
anything
do
now.
anything.
They've done what they had to do. These other entities are smaller entities.
Right.
They're not, Verizon, it's not AT&T. These are guys are coming up, and their business model is much different. We have had the comment that, we approached Verizon, but they were just too expensive. Well, that's not my problem with your business model. My issue is, we have to watch out for these other issues first to make sure that as staff, we're being careful, we're being thoughtful, and we're being complete before we go ahead and ask the board to approve a lease with a third-party entity. Again, that's a long-term lease like this. This isn't a short-term deal, this is a long-term deal. So with that, are there comments or questions?
Go ahead, Cindy.
Okay, so with the Verizon, the cell towers that we have now, some of the problems that you were concerned with, accessibility, staff taking them up to their site, do you have those problems with the current towers now that we have leases with?
We do not.
Okay.
Correct.
And so, if you were to put together a minimum criteria of saying, here's what we would need, instead of, so when somebody wants to ask us to put a cell tower up, you could say, well, here's the criteria. You go ahead and put a proposal together, and then you act to see if it would be worth anything, instead of them coming to you and saying, give us, your best sites and make you do some work kind of without, instead of you doing the work first, let them do the work. If you can give them some specific criteria, which is kind of listed right here, of what the minimum CCWD would require, let them put together a draft proposal.
package,
And
yeah.
then you could look at it and say, right off the bat, no, it's not gonna work. Or you could respond saying, well, you would have to do this, but you don't have to do any work. Let them do the work first, following a list of criteria, before having to react to anybody that says, hey, I wanna do a lease over here. And then it puts you aside to do something that you didn't otherwise wanna be doing.
Some of this information we've already got, specific to our tank sites. We know what our easement is, whether we own it, whether it's an easement, whether there's accessibility or not. Of the 30 sites that we had out there, some of them we know off the top, they're not gonna qualify. If somebody's very serious and says, I really wanna put it on C-Tank down in Copperopolis, I really need to put a tower up there. That's a specific request. We can certainly prioritize a response to that one using this criteria. But the concern that we had as staff, and the reason we brought this before you today as an information item, was to let you know that if somebody is in your ear asking you, saying, hey, why can't I get any traction? These guys don't seem to be listening. I just want to put an antenna out on one of your tank sites. Off the top of your head, it says, well, that's a pretty reasonable request. Why aren't they getting back to you? I don't know. Well, this is why. It's not a simple request as maybe you have been led to believe.
Do we have a lot of requests, or just the most recent one?
That was gonna be my
I've been here-
question,
Like I
yeah.
said, the reason I did the 20-year history is I've been here for almost 20 years. We have had interest from Caltel down in Copperopolis, for both the Copperopolis region and down in the Virginia Lind area. We've had interest from Volcano at times over the years. We've had other operators in the area, and this is internet service, this isn't cell tower stuff, approach us for assistance and the ability to hang antennas up there. Most recently, Conifer's been approaching people.
Right, yeah.
We respect the fact that when you live in a rural area, internet access has been more difficult than other areas. Comcast and AT&T, if you're on a thoroughfare or a corridor, yeah, you're gonna get it. If you're in the backwoods of West Point, no, you're not. But some of the other things have changed as well. Now the cell towers also provide data through your phones, and you can use your phone as a hotspot. You can buy hotspots individually. HughesNet, although it's gotten better, still has a huge latency issue because it's satellite technology and doesn't work very well if you're trying to do interactive type internet. It works fine for Netflix, but it doesn't work when you're a gamer. So we recognize that the limitations that are up here, if we can help with that, we'd like to. You know, I think we've shown as a district that we were willing to work with other governmental agencies. We're certainly interested in assisting anybody with public safety. But on a for-profit third party, we're going to be very much more cautious in that we don't want to enter a long-term relationship that compromises the district's primary purpose first. And that's the bottom line. District still needs to come first regardless. I'm sorry if it takes an extra 6 months for us to look at it because we've got a lot of other stuff going on.
Because.
This is not our business to sell you your access. Our business is to make sure the water and sewer gets taken care of properly.
And on top of that, well, as you're indicating, is we don't know how long they're going to be in business. I mean,
You see people come and go all
Yeah,
the time.
yeah,
We saw Golden
yeah.
State Cellular get bought by
Uh-huh,
Verizon.
uh-huh.
Fortunately, Verizon stuck with it and put money into our region.
Sprint. Yeah, Sprint.
Sprint's horrible up here.
I had it, well,
Well,
I had
it's
a tower
horrible
on
up
my
here.
property and they pulled it off.
Oh, did they? Okay.
If you could put
It is-
together
you're
a
just too hard to
policy
deal with.
for when somebody does approach, could you have a policy that says what kind of a time frame that you could respond to somebody's request? Do we want as a board to have that kind of a policy?
I think he's already said that it's gonna be, every property's gonna be a little bit different, and all the amenities surrounding it are gonna be different, so tying your hands on a
But
timeframe might not be the
But
best.
could you at least have some kind of a response that we will get this information to you in 6 months or whatever that time frame is, but have something so we don't just say, okay, we'll get to you when we can, and they keep bugging you, or reach out to a board member or two, right? And again, if there's minimum criteria, you could say, before you reach out to me, you better
Here's
have
the-
this answered first, because otherwise we won't even look at it until you have whatever that criteria is, I don't know. And we as a board, do we want to have a policy where we do
Well, if I may,
do the lease?
I think the board's already set the policy and procedure with the Verizon leases.
Okay.
And we kind of use that as our fallback. Okay, this is what we had to do with Verizon. As a public
Mhm.
agency, we need to be fair and consistent. If you meet what Verizon took care of, I don't think we'd have an issue. I think we could very honestly say, you want to pay us $1,700 a month and you want to put a 100-foot tower in down in Copperopolis, yeah, we're going to talk to you about it. But we've never had that level of request. The process that we are looking at, as I said, is that a number of the issues that we've raised, we do already have answers for, but it's where somebody's making a specific request for a specific area, we could probably get on a faster track on that specific one to look at long-term needs, engineering needs, operational needs, replacement and maintenance. As far as a policy or procedure, we really weren't looking for that from the board, other than to let you know, staff is already reliant upon our existing practice and policy of the Verizon leases, which is exactly what these folks are asking. We want to come onto your property, we want to put up a tower, we want to pay you money to do it.
So when somebody does make a request, you could say, here's the agreement with Verizon. If you're good with this, contact us and we'll seriously look at it. But look this over first. If you don't think those work for you, then there's not a whole lot that you'll do at this time. Is that kind of how it is, or it should be?
Yeah. They get a copy of the resolution and they.
That's a public document.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's, you know, I'm sure that I'm sure when they make an application, they've read the resolution, they understand what the rules are, you know, and I think most of the information is all needs to be generated by the district, because there are different departments that are gonna make decisions on it. You have to have engineering, you have to have, you know, we have to deal with the county and make sure that we don't have any conflicts with what they're doing. You know, it's very difficult for private party to get all that information. They don't know what our master plans are. They don't know what the plans are for those individual sites and stuff. So I think most of it has to be generated from us. And I don't think we've had any lengthy, are we having a problem with this? It seems like it's all.
We've had one company recently, Conifer, reaching out in several different directions to CCW staff and board members to try and get some traction on their request. We did respond some time ago through engineering to let them know, hey, the Verizon leases already have the opportunity for you guys to get out there and hang stuff if you want, up in Forest Meadows, up in Big Trees, and over in West Point. They didn't go with that because it is expensive to do it that way. And again, the business model for trying to put in an internet access point, you don't have the revenue like you have on a cell phone group that you're servicing. The internet access points, you're already competing in a limited area with people who already get internet access from other means, be it a hotspot through your cell service, be it internet through HughesNet, or perhaps you do have the ability to get the AT&T DSL, Volcano DSL, Caltel DSL, or Comcast. So they don't even have the whole county as a market.
I live out in Mount Ranch, that's where I live. Off of Swiss Ranch, and when I first moved out there was no internet.
Right.
I finally decided to go with HughesNet, which I would never again do. But I use now, it's a radio frequency, and it is absolutely the best I've ever had. Even at
Fixed wireless?
It's a
Is it
radio
Cal.net?
frequency. It's through Ron Mobley.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, if people would put that type of technology out there, it's just this one little box, and it works wonderfully. They're just repeater stations out there. So now my cell phone works at home, my internet, I get all I want. They never shut it off, and it's only $60 a month.
Is that
You know what I was
fixed, is
paying
that
at
fixed
HughesNet?
wireless?
Oh,
No, yes, that's
The
fixed
Mobley
In
does?
fact,
Okay.
I see our internet costs, you know, in our little line item stuff. Perhaps we should work with Ron Mobley to get some internet, those radio repeaters out there on our equipment. In exchange, he put it out there and we get the internet use. It's $60 a month.
We've had that request as well. You know, let us hang our antennas up and we'll give you free internet. We have kept that at arm's length because they're two different services, and again, because of the concerns we have for the for-profit, we didn't want to enter into a contractual relationship where you guys give us free internet and we'll get.
Well, I
the-
said
you
free
can hang your
internet,
top-
but I mean.
But my concern was
charge
that if we do
accordingly.
that, we've got to make that opportunity available to all the for-profit guys in the area. And as we do this assessment and come out with, okay, we're going to go ahead and allow it at C-Tank down in Copper, for example, then we need to put out in the paper, because we've had requests over the last 10 years. Hey, if you're interested in doing this, and put out a bidding process, and maybe they'll come back and say, okay, you know, yeah, we'll pay 60, we'll pay 100, we'll pay 150. You know, at some point, somebody's gonna come in, maybe with enough money to say, okay, yeah, it's worth it for us to do it. Or they'll come back, and most of these guys, it's low dollar money, and that's been the problem.
Well, for something like I just said, the radio frequency,
Right.
because it could benefit CCWD, we would lease to them and we would get a good product, which is something, do we get a good product right now using HughesNet?
We are going away from HughesNet.
Thank you. So I guess this, I mean, you want to have the policy and do the
Right.
same thing for every person. I get that and I agree with that.
Right.
But when there's somebody that potentially is going to help us have better communications out on these sites that we can't reach very well, then I think some
It's an
changes
option.
could be
We can explore
accepted
that.
for that,
Yeah,
yeah.
you'd have to look at how
Right.
far-reaching they are. I mean, you know, they're good for Sheep Ranch or Mountain Ranch, excuse me, but
Yeah, Mountain, West Point. but Anyhow, I'm just saying the product that's delivering with radio frequency
Right.
is really good.
It's working.
I've used satellite and I won't do it again. Even Comcast and whatnot, even in the town of Murphy's, depending on where you're at, and like at my office at Sanitary District, it's terrible. And it's just, and when I had it in my house, when I lived in Murphy's, it was great. But at the office, it's not so much. But anyhow, that's probably here nor there. Just
Okay, John, I have one comment. You very correctly said that our primary business is, you know, serve the water and wastewater customers, but we had lengthy discussions with the customer assistance program where we we identified that the ratepayer funds can't be used to subsidize that. We have to seek things like the tower revenue. So, I mean, I think that all the board would agree with me that you should keep that in mind, that we're seeking an increase in that type of revenue so that we an alternate revenue so that we can help to fund that program, which we all feel is pretty important. So I think that Verizon, the fact that they're charging what they charge to competitors, it's a purposeful deterrent on their part. So we should be creative and try to figure out a way that we can have people co-locate on towers. Have two providers come in and neither one of them wants to go up on a Verizon tower, then be innovative and say, well, you guys want to go together, co-locate on another tower? Yeah, let's talk about that. Okay. Okay. Any other questions on this? I am going to use the executive privilege here and declare a little recess here for a minute. So.
You don't think Joel will be 5 minutes, eh?
Excuse me?
You don't think Joel will be 5 minutes?
Well, I don't want to rush him. So. Oh, boy.
Thanks, John.
I haven't been having any time. Particularly, I'm not going to anything from those magazines. I need to get my butt out there.
Well, that's,
Scott
don't
will
play
have
with Scott because he takes the magazine.
Yeah, no, Scott will take them.
No, he has the magazine.
I like the pictures though.
Someone could read them too.
Oh, here, Jeff.
Is this 5? It's a dollar short.
This is mine?
Jeff's.
Handling, no, that's yours. You really gave him the 10.
It's mine, I
That's
think.
yours.
Oh, I thought it was
No,
Jeff.
I'm not going to give it to Jeff.
Money's not on the agenda?
All right, we have arrived at item 4F. That sounds like you're not qualified to serve in the military or something like that, isn't it?
Not at all.
No? Okay. Discussion, possible action regarding amending the fiscal year 2018-19 CIP budget for the Meadowmont Pump Station Improvement Project.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. As mentioned in the staff report, we had a fairly catastrophic failure of one of our pumps at the Meadowmont Pump Station. There were 3 pumps there. We were actually very lucky someone was not in the building when it exploded. It could have been that damaging. In talking to Damon and Charles, the best way to go about rectifying this situation is to really remove and renovate all 3 pumps, but it's going to have to be done somewhat sequentially. And their estimate on this project is $175,000 for the repair of each pump and transportation, and also the rental of a crane to remove and reinstall the pumps. And they want to be able to move forward with this project. There's no money, this is not a project in your CIP for this year, and the request moving forward is for your board to amend the 2018-19 CIP budget by adding $175,000 so they can move forward with this project.
From where?
Capital R&R funds, water, Fund 125.
I'll move for acceptance.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any board discussion?
I have a question. I don't know if you talked about this at the last meeting or not, but were there any other alternatives to this other than rehab, replacement of those pumps? Or is that the only alternative to keep processing?
The only other alternative was to actually remove and put in brand-new pumps.
But so they looked at this, and both Damon, from an operational standpoint, and Charles, from an engineering standpoint, thought this was the best option.
Is there any project in this fiscal year that is not going to get done, so you can move this one in its place? Or just taking more money and adding it to the pot for the budget?
This will not impact any other project funding.
Customer impact?
None, because they're still running off of the 2 pumps right now. It's a
Right.
3-pump redundant system. So there will be no impact.
And I thought you said that that this would get started on the first pump, but the write-up indicates that this is for rehab for all 3 pumps.
Yes, it'll be an iterative process. The first pump has been removed.
Okay.
And once that pump is repaired, then they'll go back and start removing the other 2 pumps.
The total cost for all 3 is $175.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion here? No public comments on this? Rebecca, would you take the roll, please?
Director Underhill?
Yes.
Director Letterman?
Yes.
Director Davidson?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Yes.
President Cox?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take another break before Joel gets started.
Rebecca, what's this one? Purple.
Good afternoon,
Good afternoon, Joel.
Mr. President, members of the board. I am here per a request some months ago for an update on the Paymentus payment processing program and also the customer service efficiencies that we've achieved based on this program. I know that not all the board members were here when we approved Paymentus, and so I'm going to begin by giving an overview of what Paymentus is. And I'm sorry if some of the board members have already seen this information, but I want to make sure that our new board members are aware of the system. So this company was established in 2004. It's a very fast-growing technology company. It has about 1,300 clients throughout the United States. And one of the things that sets it apart from other payment processing companies is that it doesn't charge any setup implementation fees or annual fees other than a amount per each transaction that is processed through its servers, such as a credit card, debit card, or ACH payment. So that was one of the reasons why we focused on them when we were looking for a new payment processor. So going back to when I first started here in 2014, we were using a company called Merchant Transact. That's a company that's owned by Springbrook, which is the customer management system and financial management system that we have. And so they work very closely together. The problem with Merchant Transact is that it was antiquated and they were not keeping up with new payment technologies. And so what we had, or we weren't able to process automatic payments, or we weren't able to take electronic checks, we weren't able to do auto pay without a lot of manual processing. And the company was not giving us any indication that they were going to be updating their services in order to be current and allow customers to have what they wanted. One of the biggest complaints we had was not being able to have automatic payments with credit cards. Our customers really wanted that. So when we found that Merchant Transact was not going to make the changes, we looked around, we researched, and we found Paymentus was the lowest cost for the most services, so it seemed like a really good deal. We did sign with them. And then between signing and implementation, we did find that there were some issues with implementation. The main one was that Paymentus had said it was going to be a real-time system, meaning as soon as a customer made a payment, it would show up on our computers in Springbrook. And as we implemented, we found out that Paymentus and Springbrook were not able to work together in that way. And so instead of having a real-time system, what we ended up with was a batch system, which means that at the end of every day, we would close, and then we'd send a batch out to Paymentus, and then we would get that back over the night, and the next morning import those payments. So while it wasn't a long delay, it wasn't real time. And I'll talk more about why that's caused some issues for us. But why we did like Paymentus was it was offering all these new services at a lower cost. And so what we did to get our customers to know about Paymentus was an extensive outreach campaign that involved going all over the county and talking to community groups, sending out mailers, doing websites, doing promotional campaigns with you can win an iPad if you sign up for AutoPay. And we also set up video tutorials. Customer service handled the bulk of the calls and the in-person visits to help people make the transition to this new system. What Paymentus offers that we were excited about are the following. So IVR, if you haven't heard of that, it's interactive voice response. That's basically an over the phone, like you're talking to a robot, you can make a payment. So that's something we didn't have, now we have with Paymentus. That's been heavily used by customers. We also have automatic credit card, debit card, and electronic check ACH payments, and they can all be set up for AutoPay, which was all new for the most part. One-time payments over the website, you don't need to make an account, you can just go on and pay your bill, you just need an account number and an email. Electronic checks were something we weren't able to take. Now we can take those with Paymentus. We can send electronic bills, an actual perfect copy of your existing bill, your paper bill. You can make a PDF of that and have that delivered right to your email. And we can also send messages out to customers using email, text message, or phone. And then on the back end of the system, we get business intelligence. So we keep track of customers' payment information, their contact information, and we can run reports at a staff level to see who's using it and how they're using it. So the biggest benefits that Paymentus brought us over the old system were our customers were overall much happier with these new abilities to pay. So they really liked AutoPay. They really liked being able to pay over the phone. They really liked being able to pay with e-checks over the phone. So big benefits that they liked. Now, I'm not going to say it was seamless, because we did have some folks who didn't like the transition or couldn't use the software, and we had to walk them through that. But by and large, once we got over those humps, most people are very satisfied with Paymentus. They also have bank level security. PCI compliance is what you may have heard, payment card industry. We were not PCI compliant before Paymentus, and so we were very vulnerable to losing user information, having credit cards, on file, things of that nature. We got past all of that. Now everything's on the cloud and everything's done by the user, not CCWD staff. And a big shift was, instead of our staff, our customer service reps making payments for a customer, the customers would make their own payments. So they would go online or they would call and the customer would do everything. So that's shifting a lot of workload away from our staff and onto the customer. So I want to just tell you a little bit about what the features are. The IVR, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. You can make a payment anytime. It's Spanish, it's English. It takes any payment type. Really, really good feature. There was no charge for setting this up. The only charge that we have is every time someone makes a payment, we get charged $2 for a credit card or $1 for an electronic check or ACH. On the auto pay, this was the #1 things people wanted. We were able to deliver that. Again, it shifted all those payments from phone calls and checks over to auto pay, which is all electronic, and so it just takes the burden off of customers. Also, if you need to update your credit card or anything like that, the system notifies you. So again, pushing stuff onto customers and off of staff, and so they can handle their own payments. And one of the coolest things about the auto pay is it's not just an on the due date. You can also do monthly payments or weekly payments or bi-weekly payments. So you have a ton of flexibility on making payments automatically. And the reason that's important is a lot of our low income folks, they don't like paying once every 2 months because they're used to paying monthly. And so when we were able to give them the option to pay monthly, that helped with their budgeting, and that helped them avoid the late fees that many of them had.
Is there a $1 or $2 fee for doing that as well?
Every payment that goes through is the $2 or $1 fee. So even if it's a low payment, they still charge that fee.
How is that program? Is it accelerating? Is it widely known? I mean, particularly for the sewer customers, I think that's a big benefit for them. Is it something we promote primarily to them, or?
We in the customer service all the time will say you can have all these different options. For sewer customers, it makes sense because with the monthly, you actually have to choose a fixed amount. So you have to say, I don't know what my bill is going to be. Well, sewer, you know what it's going to be. Cut it in half. You're going to make sure you're paid. If you have water, you don't know what your bill is going to be because your consumption is going to change. So your first bill will be about half, but the second bill might be short or more. So the monthly works best for sewer customers or people who have enough budget to put a big buffer for their bill so they always have some credit above and beyond what they owe. Yeah.
So if somebody if they want to get on auto pay, that has to be a fixed amount, they can't make it be whatever the amount due is for that month?
On the due date is whatever it's due on when the bill is given, the total amount will be paid, and it's paid on the due date. So that's what most of our folks use. The monthly is another option, but you do have to choose the amount. So you can't say, the first one's gonna be what I think half is, and the second one's gonna be whatever's left. You actually have to say, I'm gonna pay $100 each time.
So if you pay it based on what the bill says every other month, then you're good. If you want to split the payment up, that's where you get into a problem with not knowing the amount.
Right, that's where if you're a water only or water and sewer customer, you probably won't get that right on, yeah. In terms of your question, I know that we see more people using this in general, but I don't know if there's a huge increase in the monthly payments as opposed to the on the due date. I could get that for you and bring that back if you're interested in the monthly.
I think that a lot of people, I don't think that it's widely known that is an option to do the monthly payment thing. And I just think maybe we can emphasize that, particularly I think with sewer customers.
Yeah.
Just a comment, Joel, today. We do when there's a new account with the customer, there's a billing information sheet, and we do talk about making monthly bills, and then it's also now on the back of all the bills, there's payment billing tips, and it includes the ability to make monthly payments.
Okay, good.
So.
And that's even more important with our customers who have both sewer and water and get this huge bill every 2 months.
In terms of ACH, this is something that we improved upon, and now we can offer this as auto pay as well. A lot of people use this because it's coming right out of their bank account and they're not dealing with a credit card or having to pay that off. And another nice thing about this is instead of us having to set up, which used to require a long form and a lot of staff paperwork, it takes just a few minutes online. They can put their bank account routing number in and what they want to do for auto pay, and they're done. So it's a huge improvement to what we had before. Electronic bills were offered in the form of an email before, but it wasn't a true bill. So we upgraded that with Paymentus to do an exact representation of the bill that you would see in the mail. And that definitely is something people wanted to see, because that also includes your water usage and compare it to, or did include water usage in comparison to past months. Check by phone wasn't offered, now it's offered. The reason this is important is that picture right there, that's what we get hundreds, thousands of. That's an envelope with a payment coupon from the bill and then a check or multiple checks in it. And so what happens is we put those through a slicer so the tops are all off, and then huge boxes of mail are brought to customer service, and they have to manually take out every single check and every payment coupon and then make sure they're arranged properly, and then that's run through a machine that reads the payment coupon in the check and applies it. But the more auto pay we have, the more phone payments we have, the fewer of these we have each day to open. That's a huge time suck for staff. And then the customer portal, if you don't just make a one-time payment and you make an account, which means you sign up with an email, then you can go in, you can view like the past 12 months of your bills, you can set auto pay up, you can do electronic payment using credit card, using electronic check, using ACH, and you can keep track of everything all in one spot. And so that's something that people, if they want to go back and look at past bills, they don't have to call us, they can just go and they're all stored there for them. So we do have a lot of people who make accounts and use this customer portal. And this only takes a few minutes. And then on the staff end, we have the agent dashboard. So that's where we see all the payments categorized. We can do reports. We can go look up payments. We can void payments. We can generate a lot of tools that help us do a better job serving the customers and communicating with the customers. I will say that this is a little bit unwieldy at times and maybe not designed as well as it could be. So it does cause some extra staff time navigating this back-end system. One of the nice things that can do though is we can suspend people from making payments. And so if we go to a lock-off day and we want to stop people who are about to be locked off from making payments because they've missed their date, we can say, okay, we're not taking any payments from you on the phone, on the web, in person, until you come in and pay your full amount plus your fees prior to this Paymentus system, we had to turn the entire website off instead of just suspending the individual accounts. So all of our customers suffered, as opposed to just the ones who were basically very delinquent on their bills.
Do you get a lot of, excuse me, go ahead. Do you get a lot of these?
Well, when we
Or
hit
we have to
lockoff day, maybe it's 30 people, maybe it's 60 or 80 people, all those people need to be suspended, so they can't sneak a payment in, and then we go and lock them off, and they say, I already paid online, why are you locking me off? Well, we just want to avoid that. We don't want them to be able to sneak any payment in, because they need to call us or come in and not just pay their bill, but also pay the fees for the restoration of service as well.
So roughly what percentage is that?
Of our total customers, I may defer to Stacy on this in terms of how many we have, but let's say in a cycle we have between 6,200 and 7,200 customers. We anywhere from what, 20 to 60 lockoffs?
We're seeing it up to 80, 90.
With Paymentus having all these great features, and it's real time, and they wanted to make a payment, and you could post fees on there, I don't see why you wouldn't want them to make a payment. I'm sure there's a timestamp, so if they're gonna be locked off at 3 o'clock on Tuesday morning or Tuesday afternoon, and they make their payment afterwards, you should be able to have proof for that. Having them come down here, and especially if it's for somebody that lives pretty far away, can be pretty difficult, I would imagine. And I don't think you'd want to be locking off somebody with water that often. If you don't have to, it saves on staff time, but
Right.
anyhow, just a comment.
No, definitely. It's not that we don't want them to make the payment, it's that we don't want them to make an online payment and short pay it, or an over-the-phone payment. We need staff to know that they made the payment so we can stop the lock-off crew. What we don't want is for someone to make a payment online, we don't know about it, and then they get locked off anyway. We want to just avoid that. So we don't suspend them until they're past their time, and we can lock them off at any moment, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. The staff challenges that I want to share with you is not being real-time, which I mentioned right off the bat. That's the biggest staff challenge. And stemming from that, not having that instantaneous payment is made, payment shows up in Springbrook, causes the batches to have to go back and forth and some manual processing, which is definitely a time suck. So I just want the board to be aware of that. While the customer has a really good experience, staff does have some additional work on the back end. Also, Paymentus customer support is often slow to respond to issues that we have, and they haven't fixed everything that we want them to fix. And so we are a little frustrated with Paymentus in terms of, okay, if we have an issue that's going to make staff life easier and customers, we'd like to see them fix that and be more invested in fixing that. So that's been a little frustrating. Yes?
Joel, is there anything that either Springbrook or Paymentus can do or might be willing to do? Or have we approached either one of them to make this real-time thing happen?
Yes, that's been a point of contention since the time that we were told in the beginning, yes, we'll be real-time. And then after we signed the contract and started implementing, we were told, no, it's not going to be real-time. And that was a Springbrook decision because they owned their own payment processing company and they didn't want any other companies to be able to take their market share. And so if they work with Paymentus and make it real-time, more people might go to Paymentus and fewer people would use Merchant Transact, which is the one that they own. And so I just asked them again recently, because they've been going through some reorganization, and they said again, absolutely not, we will not make that bridge real-time with any other company. It's only going to be with our company.
What do you pay for Springbrook?
I don't know the annual cost for Springbrook.
Are you talking about the payment system, the online
No.
payment system, or just regular?
Your regular maintenance cost to be able to use that software?
In the neighborhood of, I think it was $28,000 to $30,000 a year for the, for both the UB, the utility billing, but also the finance side of it as well, because it provides our finance, and there's also some interfaces that we can utilize on the fixed asset side.
And when you have to make any changes in your reports, because you don't have the ability to modify reports, is that right? If you have something special you need done, they have to do it for you and then they charge you extra for that, is that right?
In some regards, yes, but John Gomes has been very good at this and has learned to over his 20 years, has learned to be able to manipulate the data and get most of the reports that we want without having to pay Springbrook. But just to follow up on that, Director Cicada, and I know Stacy's going to cringe at this, and Joel is saying, no, no, no. In the next, maybe next 24 months, we are going to start evaluating our online, not our online, but our financial and billing systems. It's time we take a look at it. But just to warn the board, that's a very involved process. It gets expensive upfront costs, and there's a lot of time and effort involved into it, and there is no perfect system out there. Whatever system you buy, the salespeople will promise you everything, and they will always underdeliver. You will always have something wrong with any type of billing or financial system. Going into that process and realizing that, we'll probably take a look and find out what's best long-term for the district.
You know, CSDA has that community forum, that daily community forum.
Yes.
And I see a lot of talk about how they don't like Springbrook. And so sometimes they'll give other referrals of other software. So it's just a place to go look and ask people who are using software, which ones are out there.
Yes, I subscribe to that as well, and I see that. It's basically an ERP process, and I've been involved in some high-level, low-level, and honestly, they are not fun to go through switching out your system. It's even difficult for us as to go through when Springbrook does a major upgrade, but it is something we're looking at reviewing within the next 24 months, so as we move forward, that is on our timeline.
Well, I think the software companies like to do it like that, so you don't leave. They want to make it as cumbersome as possible.
Yes.
Do you have a question?
Nope, go ahead.
In terms of the financial implications, there's no implementation fee and no ongoing fee other than the transaction fee. So the board knows, we pay $2 for each credit card transaction, $1 for the ACH, and we absorb those fees. So that means that CCWD pays those fees for each of those transactions. Now there's another option, which is not absorbing them and passing them on to the customer. And so what you have down here is if we were not to absorb those fees, the customer for the average bill would be looking at between $5 and $8 per transaction in order to pay the average bill. The reason why absorbing is cheaper is if you absorb, you get a special utility rate, and so the credit card companies charge you a fraction of what they would charge the normal consumer who's making the same purchase. So we've chosen to provide this service to our customers because it was requested and wanted, and as you'll see in a minute, it's been used widely and has been very well received, but there is a cost of doing business. So even though Paymentus is much cheaper than our last system, when we have so many more people using it, our fees are actually well above what they used to be, because we went to maybe 1,100 people using Merchant Transact to about 6,000 people using Paymentus. So the numbers, $71,000 roughly in fees in 2018. That amounts to 40 cents per customer per month, or about $4.80 a year. So again, even if you're not using this, all customers, if you really want to look at it, we're all paying for this in some way. So whether you use it or you don't, this is what is coming out of your bill each year. And then if we look at the proposed budget for water and wastewater for this 18-19, the cost of Paymentus, that $71,000, is a very, very small fraction of the actual revenues coming in to people who use it. So these are the costs, just so the board is clear on those of having this.
Okay, so can you go back a couple of sentences? You said under the last one, X number of customers used it, and with Paymentus?
So let's see if I can show you here. So here is the number of customers who use Paymentus. So 46% of all of our customers use Paymentus, 54 have never used it. So that's roughly about 6,000 of our customers have used Paymentus at least once. And then the remainder of our customers haven't. Just so you know, having nearly half your customers using a system that's only a couple years old is incredibly, quite an achievement. To see that many people adopt so quickly, very, very
You
rare.
made a comment that those figures had they at least used it once. So what are the figures of the people that use it every month? Do we know
I'm going
that?
to show you that on the next
Okay.
slide. In terms of auto pay, which was our main goal with Paymentus when it comes to using it online, we have, of the 6,000 customers who used it once, we have 3,000 signed up for auto pay. So we have a 50% adoption rate of people who have used Paymentus. And that's one of the top adoption rates in the nation per Paymentus itself. So very successful in not just having people use it, but getting signed up for the auto pay. Here's your slide, Cindy. Monthly payments using Paymentus in 2018, average of 3,200 people per month use the service, and here's the entire year of 2018 broken down. So you can see maybe a low of just below 3,000 and a high of about 3,500. So this is both cycle 1 and cycle 2. We have about 6,000 in one and 7,000 in another. So we're
That's the combined cycle, so we could say that's the number out of 14,000 customers?
Well, no, because this is monthly, so only one cycle is paying. So of about 6,400 or 7,000 and change customers, we're having 3,000 of them pay each month. So a little under 50% of our customers use it monthly. So it's not just, you know, people use it once, these people are using it regularly. And then in terms of the average daily payments, these are of the Paymentus process payments. Using all these services like the phone and the auto pay and people paying themselves instead of customer service, 92% of these payments are being handled by the customer using the system, no involvement with staff, hopefully. And then 8%, someone's still coming and swiping their card at the front or calling and saying, I'd like to make a payment over the phone. So in terms of that goal to reduce the burden of customers calling and making payments, I think we've achieved that really well. Customers are taking their payments into their own hands in a big way.
What percentage of our customers are still writing a check and mailing it with a stamp?
So I would say that based on this right here, so if we have an average of 3,200 people using the Paymentus services, but the total cycle is around 6,000 or 7,000, we're looking at 3,000 to 4,000 people are still paying using other means. So that's really going to be a check or cash.
Okay.
And who enters those payments? Customer service?
So customer service
Outsourced.
opens the mail and they run those checks through, and if it's cash, then they're going to be taking that over the counter up front. So customer service does all those. In finance. Finance is involved in running the checks.
Does anyone ever complain about the $1 or $2 transaction fee?
They don't
Is
pay.
We absorb it.
We absorb it.
Okay.
So that's where the $71,000 a year is. That's all the absorbed fees that we've paid. So customers are told this is a free service because it is a free service,
Okay.
other than their contribution as a ratepayer. In terms of the calls that we get each day, the very top line there are inbound calls, and that's to the district throughout the entire day. So that includes answering service, voicemails, all inbound calls. So I just wanted to show the board, customer service, that main number is getting almost 1,500 calls over a month. And then if you look down, you can see administration, field, engineering, finance is getting almost nothing compared to customer service. So people are calling them. Those lines right below the customer service green line are toll-free, long distance, and local, just to show you where different things are coming from. So most of the calls coming into customer service, and then here's a breakdown of the daily call stats. So you can see the green are the inbound calls, the orange are the outbound calls, and then internal is kind of the burgundy color. So you can see we have patterns going over the last month, week by week, with huge drops on the weekends, obviously. And so these are handled by either customer service or being transferred over to Paymentus or voicemail.
These calls don't represent to any other departments, like coming to you or to Jeff or anything?
So this does represent everything, but as we just saw in the last graph, well over 90% are going to customer service. So this really is mainly looking at that customer service main line. So you can see combined, we're at around 100 to 150 calls a day, depending on.
Are the outbound calls mostly people leaving messages and having to return their phone calls?
Well, the outbound calls are mostly customer service returning, but we also have outbound calls from people like me and Jeff and Peter who are calling consultants or customers about other related things, or you, but mainly this is customer service making the outbound calls. Yeah. That's not just the customers though, that also is the field crew and people of that nature. So just to wrap this presentation up, the impacts on customer service. Certainly it's reduced the number of calls, routine payment calls that they have been handling. Just to give you kind of a real ballpark number, 37,000 payments were made by Paymentus, not us. If each one of those took 3 minutes, that would be 5 hours for every day, weekdays and weekends, every day of the year. Now obviously, we're not getting that kind of efficiency. Not every call takes 3 minutes, not every payment takes 3 minutes, and so we're not getting all of that. But even if it was a fraction of this, you can see that not having those constant calls, man, make a payment, we're opening up time for customer service. And what that does is it allows customer service to spend more time with the customers who actually need to talk about a detailed issue and get help with something that's complex and beyond just making a payment. So we're seeing a little bit longer call times, but with more complex issues. And we now have a little bit more time to help those customers out and provide more customer service, which is a positive thing. And work on other things that customer service does, because they aren't just people who answer the phone. They also do a lot of other things that is very technical, and they assist other departments and do things like take water service sales and process things with engineering and things of that nature. In terms of auto pay, we've seen that skyrocket, so that's more payments that are being taken away from customer service. So our hope is our customer service is getting better and more efficient because of this program. We believe the numbers show that we have opened up more time for them for sure. However, the one caveat is that Paymentus does, because it's not real time, create some issues where we have to do manual processes, send batches out, import batches, make sure everything balances, and that's labor intensive, and you can have room for errors when that happens. So it's not a perfect system. So in conclusion, Paymentus is very popular among our customers. As it becomes more popular, our fees are going to get higher and higher and higher. So just be aware, as more people use it, more fees. Our current contract with Paymentus ends in June of this year. And so you should know that staff, Jeff, me, Stacy, we're looking at whether we want to continue with Paymentus or whether we want to get a new payment processor, and whether we want to get a new customer management system like Springbrook. Maybe that's not where we want to go. And so we're going to be looking at all of this and looking at short-term and long-term. And once we come to a conclusion of that analysis, we'll certainly let the board know what the recommendation of staff is to move forward, which will both serve customers but also serve our staff and make sure that we're keeping our costs down whenever possible.
When does the contract with Springbrook, do we have a contract, ongoing contract with Springbrook?
I don't know the answer to that. Do we have multi-year contract with them, or is it?
Yes, I believe so.
We do, okay.
And that is even more involved if we choose to change.
But we have you to make that happen, so we're good.
Yeah.
But that's why I got the resolution.
I've done a lot of those switchovers, and there's a lot to it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
If the customers really like this, do you think they'd be willing to pay a fee? Because if we have more customers, let's say almost everybody does it, and now it's, $150,000, $140,000 a year to do this, how's that gonna impact our income from water and sewer? And we can't charge them a fee for using Paymentus, but could we come up with a fee and call it something else that's $1 a month to those who use it? It could be some type of a billing fee or whatever to help offset when you have a lot more people using it. Or do you feel that the cost isn't going to impact the income side?
Well, in my mind, we know customers like this, and there would be some threshold where they would be willing to pay some amount potentially, but I do think any fee that we put on there is going to reduce the number of people who want to get on here. So we need to weigh, is internalizing these fees and absorbing them, is that more to the district's benefit? Or if we charge this fee and we get a little more revenue and we don't put out as much, is that more to the district's benefit? My approach has been, I want more people to come in and be part of this program and get on auto pay and take the burden off customer service so they can focus on other things. I also think customers are happy that way. So my approach has been the cost of doing business to offer these services is actually a very low fee according to industry standard. $1 and $2 for e-checks and credit cards is very, very cheap compared to most systems. So in my mind, this is the cost of doing business. It's very popular. I would want to keep it free, but we certainly in our analysis can show you if we didn't absorb it, what those costs would be, or we could propose some sort of a, not the whole cost, but maybe a partial cost to offset the $71,000 that we're currently paying in order to make it a little less painful.
The convenience for our customers by doing this is, it seems like it's a convenience for them as well. The reason I asked about the $1 or $2, because I pay all my bills through my bank. It's free.
Yep.
I don't pay for a stamp, but they pay for a stamp. It still comes here with a check. If it was for the CCWD, I paid a CPUD, it still comes in an envelope from El Dorado Savings with a stamp on it, and it doesn't cost me anything, and it's real easy to do. So that, I think, and I don't know how many of our customers do that, but that's,
I do.
if you start charging, them for that
Yeah.
$1 or $2, that's another alternative. Probably everyone, or most of our customers probably have a bank that they're doing that with.
Well, one of
Because
my-
I'm thinking, if you're saying that the contract is going to expire in June, what are you gonna do for 3 months to boost the number of people using
Well,
Paymentus?
Well, the contract expires in June, but we can renew it. And
Well,
so,
no, but I'm just saying, in order to, kind of help the end of it, what kind of plans do you have to boost the use of Paymentus?
well, I am less concerned about how many people we have using it right now because I feel like we actually have a lot of people using it. We always want to see that get bigger. I'm more concerned about, are we gonna try to switch to a new program between now and the end of the contract, or are we gonna do an extension that's long-term or short-term with Paymentus? And that's why the three of us are really trying to analyze all of the pros and cons and come up with a good recommendation. Because if we were gonna switch to a new program between now and the end of the contract, that's a very short period of time.
Oh, yeah.
And putting customers through an entire transition, that's something I take very seriously because I remember the last transition and it's not fun for them or for staff. And so we need to have really strong, compelling reasons to make a switch. And we need to know that if we did, we'd stick with that for a long time. Because we're not that far away from switching everyone over to Paymentus.
You know, one of my concerns is, does this process work for every ratepayer? Does it give every ratepayer the ability? And in my district, I know I have a lot of low-income ratepayers there, and a lot of them don't have internet, and perhaps a lot of them don't have a credit card or a bank even for that matter. So they do have to pay by cash. And so how is this $71,000 cost to the whole district affect, or how do the low-income folks benefit from that service? And they don't. So it, I think that's, I'd like to see it fair and the opportunity for all some way, somehow.
They do benefit with the ability of customer service to actually be able to answer their phone calls. You know, I mean, it wasn't that long ago where customer service was completely inundated, and couldn't return calls, you couldn't get a hold of them. I mean, the fact, this 71,000 is basically, it's like adding an employee and a half. I mean, they're taking call volume, that we would be paying an employee for. I mean,
Are
so
just
certainly
the
we have
low
better-
income the only ones that are
Well, you just say
calling
that,
customer service?
there's only so much we can do. I mean, this is a step, this does affect, I guarantee this helps low-income people that can put it on their credit card. I mean, maybe not in the long term, but I mean, I would imagine if you looked at the income brackets of this, I mean, I think the ones that go on a monthly basis are probably higher income, and the ones that use it, every once in a while are probably lower income, but they do have the ability to use it. I mean, certainly there's people,
they
there's
have
still people.
internet.
You don't have to have internet to do it, you can call.
Oh, you
Right?
could call.
Right,
That's
and
true.
also we do have a computer in the lobby, and our staff will actually help anyone who doesn't have internet set up an account. They just need an email,
Right,
and
but
then
if
they can get that set up.
If they drive all the way down here
That's
from
right.
West Point or Wilsonville, why
That's
would they
right.
want to use your computer? Perhaps putting a computer in the local area for their use might be a benefit for them if there's a library or something they could do.
And
But
there
it's
are
But I'm
computers.
talking about the people in Wilseyville and West Point.
An email
that
account
drive,
is free, and there are
you know.
computers in the libraries.
And yeah, that's just my concern, is making sure that it's equitable to all the ratepayers, and we don't forget that. The convenience is awesome. I do everything auto pay, but there's a convenience. Sometimes you're willing to pay for it, sometimes you're not, and it's just at what expense that it is helpful to all. Yes, it helps, I think, the district get their money quicker. We do it MSD, but I shared with you earlier, we use something different and we don't accept credit cards. And I have out of, 20 calls a month that call me regarding auto pay or pay over the phone. We don't take credit cards. They're all, what? But I could do a check over the phone. Okay. You know what I mean? So it's still that convenience, but in this particular case, it's only $2, for the use. With a lot of credit cards, you can't control those costs, like with what happened at the previous merchant area. So, and that's what I explained at us. We're really small, and we're not going to absorb the cost for your credit card where you get all your rebates, because those are even more money to the vendor. But
I think a lot of those credit cards are debit cards, actually, and in most people's cases, especially the low
yeah,
income.
but you do have the people, you probably have on a credit card that you earn points, whether it's miles or cash back. And those particular cards, when you go use them at Sears or Pickle Patch or whatever, those vendors pay a higher rate for that credit card. A
Right.
basic debit card, it's not considered a credit card, so you
Right.
pay your 50 cents or whatever. But any credit card, and you have that variable rate. American Express charges more.
Yeah.
So whatever cards they can use on there, but Paymentus is absorbing that because they're hoping they have a large quantity to, help offset some of those other fees, but.
Well, I think CCWD prior to Paymentus was a mess in customer service, and from what I understand, this is a very successful program and does free up our customer service people for a lot of things. And that $71,000 is probably not an employee and a half, it's probably an employee with benefits. It's probably
Well,
real
with
closer to that.
the
Probably one
staff,
employee.
I agree with that. With the staff having some free time, have they taken on a different type of workload? Like, okay, they're going to work and do something for another department they used to not do, since they've gotten 5 hours freed up from phone calls.
I think they can return phone calls now.
I'm just curious, they all look real happy and busy and all that stuff. I'm just kind of curious.
So with the implementation of Paymentus, as Joel had presented, it has created more back-end work for our customer service and finance and IT department. So that has added to things that they need to do, as well as when we roll out new programs such as the CAP program, calls increase, the rate increase for the first 4 months after the first billing cycle. The calls are always increased because people are wondering why their bill is so much higher than it was the last time, and you have to go through the rate increase and explain. And those conversations can be very lengthy. They're also now having longer conversations with customers in regards to things like checking their PRVs. This week, was it Monday morning? We had tons of calls about frozen pipes. Why isn't my water working? Right, so some days it's about, if there's a break in the line, then the line, it ebbs and flows as far as the call volume and what is on their plate at that particular time. But it gives them the breathing room when they go from task to task. Additionally, prior to this, after 4 o'clock, they were still trying to return phone calls from the day because they were still catching up. And now, by the time 4 o'clock hits, very, very rarely do we have a day where they have to stay later and return phone calls. They can now return phone calls within 20 to 30 minutes at the very most, where before it was a couple hours. It was that day, but it was a couple hours, not that quick turnaround.
Okay, if we can wrap this up. Joel, I have one suggestion, that the next time you have a little bit more thorough report. So.
I do have just one, okay, we have this gap between Springbrook and Paymentus, and the statement here is, say, customer service reps must check both, and that problem will never be resolved as long as we stay with Paymentus.
That's correct. There is another company, which is what we started with, Merchant Transact, that's been purchased by a larger company and reorganized, and they now have said they're investing in bringing Merchant Transact up to the current standard with modern technologies. They're just starting to do that. If we did take a risk on them, we could probably have similar features to Paymentus, and more as they invest more, and that would be a real-time system because we'd be going back to the payment processor that Springbrook owns. But again, this is all just under analysis right now. We're definitely not making any decisions one way or the other, and we'll talk about it, we'll look at it, we'll let the board know which way we go.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joel.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good job.
Okay, do we have anything under old business? General manager report?
Yes, Mr. President. First, I'd like to ask if there are any questions on the report that I submitted as part of the agenda package. And if not, I do have a couple updates on some numbers, and this is of particular interest to Directors Underhill and Ratterman. And as of today, on our customer assistance program, there are 200 approved applications on the water side, only 125 on the sewer side. So therefore, as arbitrator and grand poobah of this friendly bet, the customer assistance program did not meet all its allocations by January 31st, 2019. So therefore, Director Ratterman wins. There's no partiality here. It's all or nothing.
Ross, will you pay him?
It's just lunch money. And yeah, just to, the well-respected Director Underhill was trying to divide the bet into two, and says she only owes $2.50 is the reason we needed an arbitrator in the first place.
Okay. On a more serious note?
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes.
Of those 200 customers, can you tell me what districts they're in?
I do not have that information, but we can work on that.
Finance meeting or something?
Yes, we'll look at that.
Just curious.
Okay. On a more serious note, I don't know those of you who've been below New Hogan today, but in talking to Peter and Damon, the Army Corps upped their water releases to 4,000 cubic feet per second.
They're gonna have a big problem. Cosgrove is ready to go.
Yeah.
I mean, if it storms like they say tonight, I hope our guys are ready, because with that outflow and you know, that's what happened to us in the past. When they ramp up their outflow, there's no place for the Cosgrove Creek to to go. And it was on the golf course when I drove up here today.
Yeah.
If we get any sort of thunderstorms because we're all full down there right now. And it doesn't take much for it to go over, so.
As far as the Jenny Lynn Water Treatment Plant, we're okay there, even though the flows have caused the water level to rise. Operations is okay at this particular point in time, but you're right, it is something we are monitoring closely. Future board items, we've got a couple policies I'm going to bring back to your board in February, the next meeting. Investment policy update that's going to be brought back to the Finance Committee, one on assessment districts. There's also, Peter's going to give a Sigma update on an agenda item, and I will be bringing a resolution to change the personnel allocation to add one FTE engineer, which we discussed at the mid-year. And Finance Committee meeting next Tuesday, February 19th at 9 a.m. in this building here. That's all I have.
Okay, then, we have board reports, starting with you, Cindy.
From the last meeting, and I wasn't here, and we had members of the public from my district, they reached out to me just want to let you know that I told them I would meet with them, and since I am their representative, and just hear what they have to say. It was about the West Point
Yeah.
management plan. But, you know, as their representative, and like when I spoke to her, I want to hear about all your concerns and all your things that you like, not just about West Point. The decision was made, and, you know, hear what they have to say. So when that happens, I'll share.
Just as a suggestion, when you talk to them, take the board resolution that spells out that this, it said 10 different ways that this is not a binding type of thing. We're not gonna take the bullet.
Once it gets to the CIP, then there's something, but, you know, I've already I spoke to a couple of people, and two of them were ones that were here, and I just said, I agree that we don't need CEQA, you know, not at this point, so, and I watched the video, you know, thank you, Rebecca, and, so.
Well, people put too much weight to the fact that somebody that represents himself as an attorney with just a sterling track record and everything stands there and is insisting though that we're wrong. And I don't know. I guess I can.
On the same subject.
I have nothing to report.
No.
On the same subject, back to Cindy's comments. I asked them if they were getting our agendas, and the agenda that they did get was 2 or 3 days before that meeting. The agenda I was referencing was the one back in November, when the West Point master plan draft was released and presented. And that's what should have hit their radar.
There was one person there, because I went to that video to go look to see who was there. I was trying to get all my ducks in a row before I talked to somebody.
We all received an email from Catherine talking about the meeting, the agenda that was sent out 2 or 3 days before that meeting. And and didn't make any sense. So you're just kind of avoiding the fact that the entire group, and she gets our agendas. The attorney that was here with her, he gets the agendas, and several other people from Foothill get those agendas too. They should have noticed in November and had 2 months to respond to this thing that they wanted to respond to.
I'm a customer service oriented person, so I want to be available to them, to listen to what they have to say, share what I need to. And she did make a good recommendation, was having, I guess, Jack Garamonde has a large email list, and so he kind of reaches out to everybody in his district, and so I think I might do something like that.
We actually have that as well, but I'm sure we can have this discussion, after the board meeting, after closed session, but anybody can sign up for our email list.
To receive the agenda.
Every single one.
What I want to do as a representative for them, I want them to reach out to me and say, Cindy, this is a concern, so I can bring it to the full board, right? That's what I feel that my job is as a representative.
Okay, Mr. Director Radaman, did you?
We had a Mountain Counties meeting over at TUD, January 25th. Mountain Counties Board, one of the items on our agenda was to increase the board size from 7 to 9. And so now we're gonna have, going forward, we're gonna have a 9-member board made up of a minimum of 3 county supervisors and 6 water board members. Our next meeting with Mountain Counties is gonna be in Yuba County in a couple months. I think we have those meetings every other month. Camera's meeting here in this room next Wednesday on the 20th, a week from today at 2:30 if anyone's interested. Hopefully you're interested. That's all I got.
You can come back to me for a second? Just real
No,
quick.
you only
I'm
get
the
one
member
turn.
of the JPA on the RWM, and there was no JPA meeting in January, so I should have something to report for this month, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, my turn?
Yes.
Okay, well, I get all the fun things to do at this committee, and so tomorrow is Rebecca's birthday. And so
Yay, happy
on behalf of the
birthday.
board, I want to give you a birthday present. and it's something that you'll not ever use. You can open it.
What kind of a gift is that?
Huh?
She'll never use
Yeah,
it.
open it, because they don't know what it is.
Hillary pin?
What do we buy?
Seahawks. Where did you find that?
Take it apart. Oh,
Take it apart.
she comes from Seattle.
Okay. Okay, I'm getting flack from both sides here that my meetings are going too long, and if you wouldn't ask so many questions, we could. Okay, the only thing I have to report is that I went to the groundwater meeting in Stockton this morning, spellbinding as usual, and so now we go to next board meetings. We have one scheduled for February 27th and also on March 13th. And then, finally, we have closed sessions 9A through 9E, and we will be back to report any reportable action. Thank you. Okay, here we go. Okay.
I just want to make sure that I'll listen to them